ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Yeah.
Now for me, that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.
And we were meant to be here on Thursday.
That's right. Another Thursday, another Talking SHHhhh IT. Time to do it again.
Glenn.
Good to see you, man. Gotta love it. We got some good stuff lined up today. We got a couple of videos lined up. We got some general concepts to talk about, and we got a few different graphics to look at. All kinds of stuff.
I might have pulled an Ange there. There might have been a little looper at the beginning.
Oh, nice.
I didn't realize I didn't mute the BandLab audio.
Mm-hmm. It happens. Good thing is it didn't go wah, because sometimes you get the whole big build and the whole big screech. Those are no good.
You should have heard the noise when I set up that ample guitar earlier, and I had it running in the background, and I loaded Key Station, and it was initializing the MIDI while the amp guitar was trying to play.
Mm-hmm.
I got this loud ass. I thought I broke my mixer for a second.
Yeah, those are no good. I mean, those sounds, they will hit you right in the gut. I mean, even though usually it's a low sound that hits you in the gut, but this does it in a different way. It's like you can feel the equipment not being happy about it.
Yeah,
being
it
done
was
that
pretty
way.
much every sound that this thing could make at once.
Yeah, and that's not going to sound good. Even with stereo separation, that's not going to sound good.
Oh, it came through in stereo, blew both my ears.
Oh, no good. And the headphones, too. Now, speaking of that, like, how's the volume on the keys here?
Good.
All right, so that was the strings over there. Yep, good. And the bass over here.
Yep, bass sounds really good.
Nice. Sitting over there on the stand. We'll break that out in a little bit here as well. But a couple different things we could talk about. Now, one was a timely thing with the green comet. Had did anybody see anybody looking out there? You look out with binoculars or telescopes, you could see if the comet might have been visible with the naked eye over the last couple of days. We actually caught a couple of pictures, or some people on the internet had caught some good pictures of it as it's zoomed through our neighborhood. It was one that only came through, or only comes through on its orbit once every 50,000 years, I think it said, coming in from the outer solar system. So it's a rare visitor, and then it came by and took off again.
Oh, and this one has Ange written all over it. They first detected it on her birthday last year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let me see if I have that here. There we are. So that.
And it's swooping back around on the anniversary of her mom's passing.
Yeah.
This one
Indeed.
is for you, Ange.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Comet. And it is the comet called... this is the ZTF in the name, but it has 2022. I think it was C2022 E3 ZTF.
Oh, you really see the tail on that one.
Yeah, it really extends. And there's also there, I think they caught a shooting star that was coming right across the front there. That's what that looks like. Could also be a
Oh,
naming.
that's like Anne shooting across the front.
Yep, yep. This video was only like a minute long, and it's just basically looking at this image. But the main, this is from WN Live, was the page I found this, and this is the page that we were watching actually the other night. Tony and Ange and I were all watching this as it was going on. And how you doing, Sadia? And just seeing what was going on with the comment. You see different views, and I think Tony caught a couple of good screenshots actually. I'm not sure if he has them right now, but the screenshots where some of them show the more blue, some of them show more green. It's mostly green, like almost all of them are green, but some of them it looks a little bit blue because you're seeing it from a different angle where you might be maybe the yellow's getting cut out a little bit or overshown by something else in the sky. A couple different things can happen there.
Oh,
But
yeah, people were capturing this from all over the place.
Yep. And that also got us talking about the different resources that we talk about when it comes to scientific things, and things like Dr. Becky is one that came to mind for me. Dr. Becky Smethurst. She's an astrophysicist from, I believe, Oxford, and she has lots and lots of videos on here. And some of my favorites, like this was just recently. It was this one was talking about why the comet is green and what kinds of how you could find it in the sky, things of that nature. She has lots of videos on the James Webb Space Telescope and the findings there, and the comparing images from the Hubble with the James Webb, and just theories in general, and all kinds of good stuff. And she has she also does funny outtakes at the end a lot of times on the videos, which is a fun style.
Oh, she got blooper reels?
Sometimes, yep, at the end of the videos, where it's like getting tongue-tied and things and whatnot. Instead of cutting it all out, you just put it at the end and just make it an addition to whatever was going on.
Yeah, and what makes this one so interesting, I mean, the last time this comet passed by us was 50,000 years ago. I mean,
Yep.
This thing has gone on a hell of a journey to come back.
Indeed. And it went, let's see, who else? We also talked about similar articles from another person that I like to look at over here, which is Anton. We've looked at his articles as well numerous times. And he had a number. There's one in particular, like if you had a couple hours free, because this one's almost 3-hour long video, but this is talking about scientific discoveries from last year. So just a whole compilation of great stuff all put into one place.
Oh, look at Anton with hair.
Yep, there he is.
He's almost a hippie Anton.
Yep, and right next to it, you can see the comparison of some of the images, like this one that's moving right here. You can see just the comparison of the crispness and the detail difference between some of the images that we've had with Hubble, and then with the observations from the James Webb, being able to see so much more clearly through the dust using the infrared band of the spectrum. So getting a little bit sciencey today on some things, but just talking about the comet in general is where we started here, and he had a good one also on the rare comet, and he does talk about the 50,000 year period on the comet. And that's like a 12-minute video over here that we could check out as well. So we have a few options there, but always good stuff. This is the one I talked about also, a tractor beam. I was telling Tony about this one last night, where they're using lasers to create essentially a tractor beam effect, where it's easy to make a laser push something away, but it's not easy to make a laser pull something towards you. And they were able to make a laser essentially pull a glass slide towards it with a measurable force for the first time.
Yeah,
So that
we're
was something
almost
that
at
was cool.
Star Wars.
Star Wars, Star Trek, all kinds of good stuff coming. We do continue to make these breakthroughs because people continue to be interested in science and all kinds of applications of science. His page is called
and
What the Math.
with what they're starting to see with like the Webb telescope, I mean, the discoveries are coming fast and furious the last
Oh, yeah.
couple of years.
And that's this one right here, where he had all these exciting new images from the web and the implications of some of them, because so many of the images, they're already blowing us away with what they're showing us and what they're revealing, but also there's so much data in them. It kind of like in the background of every image are thousands more things to study, where you might not realize it at first, or you might have been looking to see this one particular feature, but while you were looking at that one feature, you captured so many other things, and some of them are the oldest galaxies ever seen. Just because the light's been traveling for so long. It's pretty crazy. And again, all kinds of good technology information here from Anton, as well as from Dr. Becky, and different types of things that they go over. But they do. There's a lot of intersection. And one of my other favorite science resources is, of course, Neil deGrasse Tyson and Star Talk.
Oh, he's like the king.
Of
when it
course.
comes to Star Talk.
Yeah, and he's one of my favorites as a science communicator as well, because he's really, his focus is to make sure that he can make it relatable for everybody, and the other guys are as well. This is just something that he's always had as his focus, and it's so many great. I mean, you could spend weeks and weeks and months just geeking out on all kinds of good stuff here.
Oh, and he's not cheap to get to speak. I was actually watching a video earlier. They were saying $85,000 just to get him, you know, to come do a lecture.
Hmm. Well,
The
we
man
have
knows his shit.
we could offer some Reese's, but I don't know if we have 85 grand in the budget, so we'd have to see if we can make that work.
Maybe some Reese's.
I know Ange has
Pieces.
Reese's. I know Ange has Reese's, so we can sweeten the deal a little bit with some of that. But
Yeah, good luck trying to get them from her.
yeah, well, maybe I shouldn't be offering things that aren't mine, but that is one thing that we know we have available. But yeah, he's got tons of good stuff here, and again, you could, as far as topics, as far as what you look into, there's just so many things that'll catch your eye. Whether it's about chemistry, whether it's about physics. Most of it is physics and astrophysics, or a lot of it. Here's another one about the last seen 50,000 years ago, the comet, and it gets into why it's green. It is because it's diatomic carbon, basically two carbon atoms connected together, or becomes this green color when it sublimates or is boiled off of the surface of the comet as it comes in close. Because when the comets are in the outer solar system, they're frozen, they're just inert, they just sit there. But as they get close on their closest approach to the sun, they start to get the tail that you see getting blown off by the solar wind as it comes in close, and it's boiling or sublimating off the material that is on the comet. And it makes a really cool looking tail in the sky, because you have one that's like the dust debris trail behind it in from where it has been traveling, and then the other one could be a completely different direction, which is getting blown off by the solar wind, so it's always opposite the sun. So it looks like it swings around as it goes around the sun. And when it came in from above the plane of the planets and kind of swooped in past us, and now it's back out and gone again, and we won't see it again for probably 50,000 more years if it comes back.
Yeah, can you imagine what was looking at that 50,000 years ago from here? Was it the dinosaurs?
50,000? I mean, not so much. It would be, just, let's see, the last ice age ended 10,000, or the last 10,000 years. Things have been pretty stable temperature-wise. Like if you look at the really far ice cores and looking at temperature differences there, and you can look into volcanic rocks to see when magnetic flips take place over really, really long time periods. So they've got a pretty good idea of what's happened, even billions of years ago, millions of years ago, thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, and then we start keeping better records much more recently. But 50,000 years ago when it was here, as far as what they would see, wouldn't be that much different than what it would have seen even 200 years ago, as far as what you would see from space if you were sitting on the thing. Again, if we're talking about a technology species, even looking down, even if you saw lots of humans, there would be lots of humans, but no technology signatures. Even, again, a couple hundred years ago, there would be no real signatures of technology. There'd be some metal stuff that we're banging around on the surface with, but nothing that's broadcasting into space, for example. So it wouldn't have looked that much different 50,000 years ago when there was, again, still nothing broadcasting into space. There were animals of different types, clanking around on the surface. What they were hitting each other with didn't really matter, whether it was metal or stone or bone or wood or whatever. But it was technology that really is the difference. If somebody was passing by and were changing their interest level in what was happening, it wouldn't be as much of a population thing as it would be wow, there's, from a far distance, you could see our technology signature. Far distance from where we are, but on a universal scale, it's like the tiniest, the tiniest corner of where we are. We're in the middle of the Milky Way over here. And if you looked at how far every signal we've ever broadcast traveled, it's still a tiny little bubble in there. So like from outside our galaxy and just way far away in the universe, it would look, you wouldn't see us very easily. Let's put it that way.
Just a little speck.
But we do look for other planets in the habitable zones. That's one of the ones that they get into on some of these, especially with Anton's, I believe. He probably went into a lot of those, or actually Dr. Becky's would be a good one for that as well, where she talks about which types of habitable planets, planets in habitable zones around stars. I was looking for one where they had a graphic on it, but usually you'll see them. You're talking about what kinds of things you would see, what kinds of technology signatures you would see. Thinking about if you were looking at us from a distance, what would you see? and then transposing that to what we're looking for when we look out.
If they're looking at us from a distance, they're probably just going to see you.
Yeah,
The
they might hear me.
guy.
They might hear me too. Send a deep voice signal out to them. Now, super voids, that's a fun one too. As a concept, like if you're ever feeling big, go look at a super void. If you want to feel really, really tiny, because the super voids out there are so enormously huge. They're just areas where there's like literally nothing, or like a star every, way once in a while. You could be traveling. It's like the deserts of space, where you could just be traveling. I mean, even at really, really fast speeds, but fast but possible. Let's put them that way.
Is that
Fast
where
but possible. You'd still be
Is that
traveling.
where they study dark matter?
Nope. Dark matter is more kind of everywhere. Wouldn't be as much out there, we don't think, because there's really nothing going on out there. So there would be no reason to think that there's a lot of stuff happening there unless you see the warping of light. Like that's where they use gravitational lensing. If you look at some of the images that they take, and you see in the background these galaxies that are like smeared or smudged in the image. And a lot of times that means that the light that came from that actual galaxy came from behind a lot of stuff in between us and it. And that light got bent in a little bit. So you're actually seeing two images or more of stuff that's behind it. And the more mass there is between us, the more concentrated that mass is, the more that light could be bent on the way here. And we're talking about a lot of mass. So we're talking, galaxies and superclusters of galaxies and things like that. When the light goes past those things, or you're looking directly past some of those things, you'll see the images from behind coming through.
So it's like looking at something where there's layers of things, like when we were watching last night, and you were saying the comet was in the front really big, and then you see all this stuff behind it, and if there's things that you can't really see but they're in the middle of it, they can affect the light that you're looking at.
Yep. In some cases, it can block some of the light. Like if it's dust in between you and the thing you're looking at, it blocks it out somewhat. But that's where James Webb has an easier time seeing through dust, because it's looking in infrared light rather than invisible light, the way that we usually look with the Hubble, for example. So when you see the, I think it was on one of the images from Anton's pages, but there was one looking at the pillars of creation. That's the one where you see kind of these features. Which are like star-forming regions, and at the ends of these little like tendrils that look like almost like an octopus tentacle coming out from like one of these gas clouds. At the very end of that tentacle is usually it's a star-forming region. So there's a star being born there, or a star that was ejected is pulling this trail of gas behind it as it's leaving that cluster, and that's what gives you that kind of a look. But that was like a big star-forming region. And now that when you look at it with the James Webb, you can not only see more features in the actual structure, you still can't see through all of it, but you can see through much more of it. So you can see a lot of stuff behind it that was blocked by dust before, where it looked like it was all just a curtain of dust that you couldn't see through. Now we can see all the stars that are behind there.
When did they launch the Webb? Just a couple of years ago, right?
It was recent. Let's see. It took a while to cool down. I think it was pretty recent. It might even been more recent than that even. But it was, it took months for it to get out there and cool down was the main thing. Like once it got there, it was step by step cooling it down to super, super cold temperatures. And that's why it has that really cool like sunshade on the one side of it that's like the size of a tennis court. That's, several layers that are all separated by some space to allow heat to not hit the actual craft, heat from the sun. So the sun never sees that side or the side where the actual instruments are, because that's so cold on this side. And it's just taking solar power from the other side where it is getting the sunlight, but then blocking the sunlight from getting through to the instruments. It's heating them up because they are very sensitive. But it's fun stuff.
Yeah, she's got an awesome job.
Yeah, definitely. She does, and Neil deGrasse Tyson does, and Anton Petrov does. They all have fun jobs. There's several others. I would mention probably like 5 or 6 others. I'll bring up other pages periodically as we go forward. Maybe we won't do as much of a solid, looking through. I just wanted to get a couple of different resources for everybody, so that to take a look at some of these things, because when we were talking about the comet the other night, it's like we found a page to watch it from, but then if that goes down, it's like, oh, where do you want to watch it from? And it's like, oh, well, I've got a couple of different places that I can just go to right away that I know I can likely find something useful for scientific stuff like that.
Oh, and I bet after last night you're going to start seeing a bunch of clips over on YouTube.
Oh yeah, most definitely. That is coming for sure. Now, how would the Comet song go? Like, it would be something that would be very it would be spooky, right? It would be like maybe F sharp minor.
Gonna write a Comet song.
I'm just thinking like strings, like that whole background thing, because like you could be watching it for hours, right? So if you had like just something that was like a 1 6 4 5 in a minor key, that'd be weird, right? But no, we would do like a 6, start with the 6 and then a 4 and then a 1 5.
I'd go with the pad.
Pad's good, yeah, yeah. And even the neck key is nice.
I'm floating through space.
Thinking G and D feel good there.
Oh, you want D?
No, what you were doing, but then I'm hitting a G and a D. I like it.
Ooh, a long tail pad. There sounds like a comet.
Well, let me put the comment back up for us. There it is.
Feels like I'm out in space.
I do like strings for that. Even just single little stuff like that. Strings feel nice. I was going to say horns, but horns would probably be a little too abrupt.
Well, it depends. When you're talking space music, one of my favorite modern composers, Holst. You ever hear Holst the Planets? He did like a composition for each of our planets, and
Nice.
Mars, the bringer of war.
Yeah.
A lot of horns in that
That
one.
I was going to say that should be powerful, yeah.
Yep.
Do you remember what key that one was in?
I want to say E. I actually did that one like 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it was in a minor key.
That's some space music. Comet C 2022 E3 ZTF.
And it's green.
And it's green. Diatomic carbon.
Diatonic carbon. That sounds like a metal song.
Diatomic carbon!
or a band name for a metal band.
That could be.
We
could be.
are diatonic carbon.
See, it also depends how they spell it, too, because they could always do like DIE, like diatomic carbon,
Yeah, now it's doom metal.
and then it's doom metal. But that's changing the whole theme. And that would definitely be faster, and it most definitely wouldn't be strings. unless it was some kind of orchestral doom metal, but I don't know if that's allowed. Like, that might be like unofficial blending that's just totally off limits.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll let you do orc in doom metal.
I mean, orcs belong in Doom, though, right? If you look at certain types of orcs.
I'll have to ask James about that one.
Now, I understand that you had a couple of video clips for us looking as well.
Yeah,
What were you thinking about for today?
Well, I've been hunting around for that Tonga drums that I was talking about a couple weeks ago. Because
Oh, yeah.
I really want to get one of these. And this one's MIDI.
Nice.
And you can play it with the mallets, or you can play it with your fingers, and it really is nicely for finger tapping.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued because just the types of inputs we were talking before about, even the Axiom. The Axiom like this with the pads. You've got the dark pads here that you can almost not see because it's black on black, but there's 8 of these right here, and they have a good feel to them, so you can finger drum on these pretty well. So if you do, just even if you could just go back and forth, like it hooks up USB, and you can just fire it up. It's got the a good bend wheel for the MIDI, and it's also got the modulation wheel. So it's basically it's a good controller. It's got the 8 controls on the top here plus the others. But I like the feel of these as opposed to on the Casio here. I've got buttons, but these buttons are they're very small, and they're kind of like chiclet keys instead of these flat surface ones.
Yeah, and
So they're a little more difficult.
M Audio makes great pads. For the price, you get nice pressure sensitivity. They very responsive.
Yep. Now I just have to work on my timing and be able to play better. So it's not yay. I have to really be able to get into a groove. Because I've seen some people will use the are they maybe a Kai? This like the 16 button pads or the 20 like the big pads.
Yeah, the MPC Akai is another one where the pads are phenomenal.
Yep. Because some people when they're good with those and they're doing whether it's 2 and 3 at a time or whatever, just getting good riffs and patterns going. It looks really easy and it looks really quick, but it's fun. And that's where, again, it depends what you're trying to do, and it depends what you're using them for. In my case, I just basically, if I were using pads, I'm trying to just get something down as an idea and then be able to fill in those parts after the fact. Doing a little bit of a songwriting stuff. Blueface and Young Trap, what's up?
Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I found the MIDI Tonga drums that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy that we looked at last year when we were looking at the wireless drums and air drums and all those things.
Right.
He does tons of reviews. Is it showing?
If you guys have songs that you want to send, you can send them over to Angified, and she'll think about them for other days. We're not really taking links for tonight, thanks.
So this is Looted over on YouTube, and this guy's got great equipment reviews on all sorts of unique controllers.
I can see the one right there, like Omniphone or something, the one that looks like a big musical note. I've seen that one before, the one on the right there in the image, on the top banner.
Oh, up here, yeah.
So it's probably a little fourth video from on the top there. You'll see the same instrument.
Yeah, I love that. He reviews the unusual controllers. These aren't your typical instruments, but he will review anything.
Nice. And that's where it's good. Those kinds of controllers, I like to see reviews of them just to see, because a lot of times whether it comes to software, whether it comes to new pieces of hardware, it's important to just try some things out. Just get in there and try things and see how it works for you, because you may discover features you didn't know it had. You may find things that are shortcuts to make things work easier for you that you didn't realize or wouldn't have found if you looked in the manual necessarily. So it's important to just try things out and see what you get. You might like the sounds.
Here, the top 5 weirdest musical instruments. This is my kind of guy.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen a few of his videos before. I'm not sure if I have him followed. I'll have to look back into that.
A drum plus a massage gun. Now I'm curious.
There you go.
Oh, and yeah, he's got a couple of videos where he reviews kids' toys, because sometimes some of these kids' toys are pretty advanced.
I saw one once. It was basically mini drums. It had drumsticks that were attached with wires, and then it had basically the same kind of pads I have in my little cheesy electric drum kit. But it actually had, it would be something that would be fully functional if somebody did sit down at it and wanted to learn how to play. If they could play on that, and you sat them at a real drum kit, they would be able to play just fine, because it had all the pieces in the right places that you want them. Not doing song reviews tonight. You can send songs over to Angified, and she'll consider them for future shows. Thursday, we talk about music, and we talk about science, and we talk about stuff, and we play some music.
Oh, he's trying out bass for the first time, too. I knew I liked this dude.
Nice. And that's another thing that we have numerous resources for that we talk about a lot of times, is whether it's beginners, whether it's intermediate, whether you're an expert, whether it's bass, whether it's guitar, whether it's keys, whether it's voice. There's all kinds of things that we can look at, whether we look at them together or whether we look at things that you've done with some of these things and analyze to see where what things work best.
Yeah,
that's important.
There's the one on the wireless virtual drum kit.
Nice. Yep, yep.
Although it looks like he's on a second.
I think there were a couple different ones. One was, I want to say, Bluetooth, and that one was not so good in the one review. And then there was a review of one that had I think it worked by IR or by camera essentially, and that's why the one
The one you shared was that's camera one,
Yeah.
which was a lot more accurate.
because for the
That's
feet,
one-
yeah, because it can tell frame by frame if it's taking a camera, whether it's 60 frames per second. I mean that's fast enough to get a lot of details about when your foot stopped going down and started going back up.
Yeah, and
So it can tell the
actually-
kick drum very easily.
it's one that I want to get this pad, and
Mhm. That's
his
the one.
review
Oh,
was
nice.
part of the reason. Yeah, yeah.
That actually looks a lot like the drum practice pad, which I thought was right there, but it's not. It's on the
This
other
one
side.
this one gets great reviews. Everybody who's tried it.
Hmm. And like you said, all the weird instruments like that one right there, where you hit it and almost sounds like a duck call.
Oh,
A guitar with no
covered
body
the
over there.
Stylophone.
Stylophone, yep.
Yeah, Shinji's first contest that he did last year, that was the
Yep.
prize, was a stylophone.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that one out. Well, here.
And that's the other thing is, if I were at a garage sale or whatever, I just see like some kind of an instrument there. If it works, I would grab it just to mess around with it. Even if it's something that's I didn't know how to play or wasn't sure I could even figure out how to play. It's something that would be fun to just get and mess around with and try things out. But that's me. I'm a tinkerer. I mean, I can see that Tony is too. I mean, at least 5 of those things in the room there came from a garage sale, right?
At least 5.
That's the way it works. I have a bunch over here too. They're just not on camera. Some are over there, some are over there. But just you're getting things together. And even when I was first starting out, just the first couple of guitars and the first, I still only have one bass in the house, but I have, I also have a fretless over at the studio. I also have a fretless over at my sister's house. So it's good to have instruments around to be able to use. My guitars, I think most of my guitars are here. I have one acoustic down in Philly and one electric over at the studio, Joey's. But that's the Strat style. So that's the one that's the blue Strat style. It's an Epiphone that I've had forever. That was my first guitar. And knowing nothing about guitars, I did so when I took all apart and sanded it down and put it all back together after I painted it. So it's it's one that I'm sure there's things that I didn't do the right way because I didn't know much about instruments when I did all that. But I just thought it didn't look cool with the color it was, so I just wanted to change it. So sanded it all down by hand and did all that.
Oh, and the Epiphone's highly modifiable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep, it's a Strat
that's
style, so it's got the
that's a guitar. Guitarists can really tweak.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing I will say is after playing that for so long and then going to the SG, the SG that I use has just such nice binding. The binding is like along the fretwork when you're sliding, like it's the white stripe along here that's just so smooth, and like the frets, you don't feel them at all. Like even if you're over the top where you're touching strings as well as coming over the edge, you don't feel the edges. That's big. Like if you're ever looking at instruments in a guitar store or whatever, you grab the cheapest one off the shelf and you feel what it feels like if you tried to run your fingers along the edges of the frets, and then you grab something $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 guitar and you feel it, and you'll feel a huge difference. Usually it's that binding or the care that was taken in putting together. But it's also where this is a Fender. It's an SG. Sorry, a Gibson Fender. It's a Gibson SG. The
Blasphemy.
Blasphemy. I was talking about the Epiphone before, so I was thinking about that. The Epiphone isn't quite as smooth along here. Like I can definitely feel the frets when I go from one to the other. I can definitely feel it more easily. But still, there are things that you can do with the because the big difference with the Strat style is the 3 pickups versus the 2 pickups, and the different things you can do with that 5-way switch. In addition to just there are other factors as well, and it does have a whammy bar as well, so I can do some dive maneuvers that I wouldn't be able to do on the SG, but I don't really play that style that much, and if I did, I would probably go with something.
I don't think I've ever seen you whammy.
No, you don't, because the SG doesn't have one, and even on the Epiphone, one of the first things I did when I was playing it back then is take the whammy off. It's just you spin it until it just comes off and just put it aside, because I wasn't doing stuff. I was just learning scales and learning chords, and it's like there wasn't much that I needed to go wow 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 when I'm just learning da na 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 na. It's like I can save the wow 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 till later.
And if you take it off, does it still have the detuning problem.
Oh yeah,
when,
no, well,
when,
it's not even the detuning. The detuning problem really only is as much when you use
when you use
the
it.
bar, but you don't have to use the bar either. Is I could literally just press on the hardware on the back there, and I would get the same effect as if I were pulling up on the whammy bar, where I could make it bend doing that. And if I wanted to bend it down, I could literally lift up a little bit on the hardware on the back of the guitar, and so I could kind of fool my way around it. But again, I wasn't really going for that sound. And even if I was playing guitar, I would be doing more rhythm guitar at that point. So it would have just been doing chords and other things where I'm not really worried about the whammy or the dive at all. But that's something I would think about in the future. Would be something like my nephew has a SHHhhhh, and that sounds amazing and has the dive features. Like Joey has several at the studio that are all he's got the what's he have? It was just everything. I mean, all the ones like when the guys are like, oh yeah, I wish I had a this, I wish I had a that. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure Joey's got one. And it's like if it's got the he's got the ones for metal, he's got the ones for like old '80s sound, he's got the ones for '70s, '60s, psychedelic, stoner rock, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter. You could play whatever with the arsenal he has. Yep. He's got quite the arsenal. And for most people, having 2, 3, 4 guitars is enough. But he probably has way more than that. And that's one where it's a matter of what you collect over the years and why you have them. Like if you get a unique sound from each one. The other thing though is that he's not. For some people, it's like they keep getting nicer and more expensive and better guitars just to put them in a collection and never play them. With him, it could even be like the cheapest guitar that they have in the whole store. If he picked it up and he liked the way it felt, he would grab it just to have it because he liked the way it felt. There could be something unique about that instrument that spoke to him, and that's why I like the fact that with his collection, it's instruments that either spoke to him or came to him.
I'm a big advocate of the guitars that get the guitars for the feel and the sound versus the status symbol guitars.
Yep. And for me, when I got the SG, it was not even it wasn't a status symbol thing. Like I had the Epiphone that I had for all that time, all those years, but it just wasn't. It didn't, like I was saying, the feel wasn't right. Like I couldn't play smooth and quickly, or I would feel the frets from the way I was sliding on it, and that could just be again because of the way I took it apart and put everything together. It's still there wasn't the same binding though, which isn't as smooth as the SG is. But I knew that SG was a solid name at the time. I really wanted to get something that was going to last. And of course, I knew that it basically my guitar looks exactly like Angus Young's guitar. So I mean, it's like I know there are people who play an SG and that it works fine for a lot of different types of music, and solid name, solid feel. So I said I'm going to do that. Jumped right in with it. Sight unseen. I just had it delivered to me, and was just super happy with it. I did get a setup with it, and get a setup right off the bat to get it. Make sure because I did know of I know people who are more serious musicians than I was at the time, and they said, oh, the guy I go to get my guitar set up is over here in New York City. So I brought my guitar over there, got a nice setup done the first time, so everything's all set up just the way it should be, get the strings I wanted on it and all that.
Yeah,
and that was another thing. I didn't know what type of strings I wanted.
Being in Jersey and next to New York, you probably have access to a lot of good guitar technicians around there.
Yeah, the one that I went to at that time was somebody who was working at one of the most famous music stores in New York City for a long time as a guitar tech. And then when he went out on his own, he was basically working out of his apartment on the Upper West Side. So I would just, and that's from here. I mean, I could be in New York City. That's like 10 miles. And I'd be in New York City and, I could be up over there another 5 minutes. But that's the whole thing. That 10 miles, depending on what time I try to do it, that could take me 2 hours. So it's all when you go and where you're trying to get.
Well, having a good guitar tech, always useful, if you're buying a lot of guitars.
The other thing is, though, that I've also, since that time, I've also become more of a guitar tech. So, like, anything that needs to be done, I can really do it myself if it comes down to changing the action. And I'm not trying to disparage, the difference, where if I did bring it to, the guy, it would come back much better than if I do it myself. But by learning how to do it myself, I'm able to stay on top of the types of changes that normally you would bring it to him, and there'd be a huge difference from when you bring it to him and when you get it back, where there really shouldn't be, because if there was, some adjustments needed, you should be doing them over time. Like I should notice when my intonation is out. Like when I'm playing an open string E, and then I'm playing at the 12th fret E, nice and gently, that should be the same exact tone. Like it shouldn't be one of those is sharp and one of those is fine, or one of those is flat and one of those is fine. They should be the same. So that's what you're looking at for the intonation, is you want that open string and the 12th fret to be the same.
You have definitely learned it. I've seen you do your intonation on your guitar.
Yep. And the one that still bugs me sometimes is the bass, because that low B is deceiving, and also the tuner doesn't really pick it up that well. So I can hit it and watch the tuner tell me, oh, it's flat by 4 cents, and then then it vanishes. And then a few seconds later, it's like, oh, it's sharp by 8 cents, and I haven't touched anything yet. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay.
Is it that sensitive? That
It's not that it's that sensitive. It's
floats
that
like
it's more that it doesn't recognize such a low tone that much. It's not really. I mean, that low B is down around 30 hertz. So it's like, it's more for guitar, and guitar ends a lot higher than that. The bass,
Yeah.
I'm getting down low, and then I'm going down lower than that by getting that low B. So that low B is down there. And it's one of those things that's, tough to figure out. That was one thing that got me with Chris Lippe the other day, though, when he was talking about. I think it was him when he was talking about one day he had like a cold, or his voice was able to get like one note deeper than it normally was.
Oh, he
And
got
so-
Glenn level.
So he was able to like, and there was a particular song that he did that like he wanted to do the bass line vocally, and so that particular day he was able to get to that note that he never was able to get to, and it's just because, I guess he was just coming off a cold or whatever it was, but he felt like he could get a deeper note than usual. And for me, that's a morning thing. Like if you wake up in the morning, your voice is definitely lower. So you'd be like you can get even lower than you normally can get when you first wake up. So if you need to record something low, try it first thing.
Astronaut uses the Floyd Rose.
Yeah, can't stand it, huh?
That's usually the go-to for a lot of guitarists.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's some of those. I know that the Bigsby tailpiece on some of the types of guitars that Joey plays. I mean, he's all over the map, though. I mean, it could be a 335 one day, and then he's using a shredder metal guitar the next day, and then he's using the Les Paul another day. He's all over the map. So it all depends on what we're trying to do. And also he likes to just, break all of the guitars out and, give him some exercise now and then. So, sometimes he's just breaking out the guitar because he hasn't played this one in a while. And so it's time to break it out. But for me, it's like if I'm at the studio, it's almost always the 5-string. At the studio, it's the ESP LTD 5-string, the B21, I think it is. And, the B15. But it's 24 fret 5-string bass with the low B, and the one I have here is long neck. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel any different. It's more that just the fretboard just continues further up into the body is the way that kind of the way to look at it, because the frets are still the same distance apart. The neck's not extra longer compared to this one feeling. It just seems like when I'm playing, if you want to get really really high, you can get all the way up there.
Strung through the body, huh?
Through the body, yeah. I like that too. And that's the thing is, it depends if you bend the strings a lot or if you don't bend the strings a lot. If you want to have flexibility in, you don't want the tuning to come out. So that's one of the things that people, if they're going to be doing a lot of dive bombs or doing a whole lot of like super big bends, you've got to be aware of how your instruments react.
And it's not necessarily any one genre. I mean, you could be
Exactly.
playing dead and pinching and bending all over the place.
Oh yeah, and Gilmore with the 3 half-step bend.
yeah.
I mean, those 3 half-step bends are gorgeous. But making sure that when you come back down out of it, that you're going to be in tune when you continue to play that solo on that string, that's important. And that's one of the things that too many people, when they do tune up their guitar, no matter what they have, hardware-wise, when they tune the guitar, a lot of times they'll just fiddle with the tuner up or down or whatever until they get to where it looks like it's fine, and then they start playing. And then a couple seconds later, they're out of tune again, because as soon as they start putting any kind of tension on the strings, whether it's playing notes hard or whether it's doing any bends or any of those dive bombs or bends, pull-ups with the bar, you end up putting more tension on it, and that can pull it back further out of tune. So you need to really tune it, bend it, see how it sounds. If it needs it, tune it again, bend it until it gets to the point where you can do those 2 and 3 half-step bends on each string without them coming out of tune. And just by going, and that's why tuning's a process.
Yeah, you don't want to be retuning between every song in a set list. If you
Right.
are, then you got to tweak up your guitar.
And I've said some of the people that I watch play, they play with 7 guitars on stage. So that's 7 instruments that have to stay in tune. So like before the show starts, they have to tune them all up, make sure they're all good, and then as they do each instrument switch, they probably just have to double check real quick, because even just sitting there, might change how they
Or
how
they
sound.
need a Glenn backstage, so as they throw it back there,
Yeah.
you tweak it up, get it ready for the next.
Here's the next one. Quick launch. Yeah. I've acted as guitar tech on a couple
It's
of the
dirty
gigs.
job, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. It was usually on the gigs where they needed to switch back and forth from the acoustic to an electric, just to not have to deal with getting into the case and all this other stuff, where you can just finish the one song, come over and just pull it off over the head and swap out. So made it easy. But I was there anyway as a light guy and sound guy and roadie, so I'm there. So yeah, just throw the guitar tech hat next to the other ones and just switch to that hat when it's time, and we'll go get it done. Now, let's see. We got a little bit of time before 10, but we're just coming in on an hour, so probably a good time to throw a video up.
We're gonna check this Tonga drum out. And
Nice.
I'm really anxious to get my hands on one of these. I can't wait to see what he does with it.
Nice. The Tonga drum.
You know what else to say about this apart from just sounds bloody lovely. Welcome back guys to another edition of Looted. Today I have plasters on my fingers because I managed to give myself friction burns the other day and they're quite hideous. So for your sake, I've covered them up. Aren't I a nice boy? Today we are once again checking out yet another musical instrument, and it is actually another version of an instrument that we've checked out in the past, but you know, we've already mastered the basics of this instrument, so we might as well move to a more advanced version because we're qualified to do that. Definitely. Today we are checking out the Beetroot tongue drum by the guys over at Beetroot. Now, Beetroot are a France-based company which decided to send us this drum out of the kindness of their own hearts, and I was particularly interested by this thing because it's not just your regular tongue drum. This is a tongue drum which you can actually tune, and I'm very interested to see how well that works. Also, one great thing about it is just look how stylish this drum looks just on the packaging. The white, the black, the cool font that they've got on the front. It looks like a futuristic tongue drum, and I'm well into that. The unique instrument with a deep and melodic sound. Ooh, oh, look at this. All right, so we've got a few pieces of paper and the tongue drum. Never ceases to amaze me how heavy this thing is. Oh god, they're not exactly giant, they're just bloody heavy. Oh, and it also came with some nice looking drumsticks as well. So let's start off with the bag itself. It's got a nice handle on the top there, actually quite well padded as well, so that's not gonna hurt your hand. You then got a shoulder strap as well, and I imagine actually with the weight of this drum, having this on your shoulder, that's gonna take a lot out of you. You've got a little pocket on the back there, which I'm going to assume is for your drumsticks. Yeah, that seems about right. Looks pretty sturdy, I like the look of it. Let's go ahead and get the drum out. And here is the tongue drum. Whew. As expected, this is one hell of a stylish tongue drum. Just look at this thing. The carbon fiber texture they've got around the side here and on the logo on the front just looks top notch. Now this tongue drum has one thing which sets it apart from any other tongue drum I have ever seen, and that is the fact that you can change the scale of this thing using magnets. Let me show you how this thing works. So on the inside there you've got 3 magnets which you can put on different tongues of the drum. Let me just pull one out, show you what it looks like. Literally 3 tiny magnets with a little handle. Then on the inside there you've got a little sticker which has instructions of where to put the magnets for different scales. Very, very straightforward. So the first one we're going to try is the happy scale, and that requires no magnets, and that is the major scale. Now I'm going to use the drumsticks instead of my hands because you get a much louder noise when you use the drumsticks. It's just a beautiful sound, isn't it? I can never get tired of a tongue drum. So that was a major scale, so let's go ahead and try the minor scale, which is called Zen. One on the yellow, one on the green. So that is now set to a minor key. They've called the minor scale Zen, but honestly, I feel like any scale on a tongue drum is pretty zen. Sounds spooky.
It's kind of mysterious.
It's very mysterious. Spooky, mysterious. Sounds like a murder's happened. I don't really know what else to say about this apart from it just sounds bloody lovely. Let's just go down the list and try the next one, which is tribal, which is a pentatonic scale. I'm not getting tribal vibes from this sound. Maybe it's because I don't know how to play tribal music. I feel like maybe if I did, I'd get more of a tribal vibe.
Next scale.
Next up we have the melancholia scale, which basically means the sad scale, I'm assuming. I've got to say, after using all the different scales, there's really not a huge amount of difference in them. After using the major and the minor scale, it's obvious to see that all the other scales are just slight variants of those two scales, so there's really not that big of a difference. But just the fact that you're able to change the scale on this thing so easily and so simply, it's just something I never would expect in a tongue drum. One thing I just noticed, which I completely forgot this tongue drum has, is an output for an amplifier on the side there. Because you can't end the video without plugging an instrument into an amplifier. Let's just move this a little bit further away from the amp, shall we? Let's turn the volume up on the... Oh, no. Definitely resonates in your ear just a tiny bit. Well, I guess there's really not much to say here apart from plugging this thing into an amp gives you a faithful reproduction of the sound, just quite a bit louder. And the fact that it does come with an audio output does give you the opportunity to plug this thing into a recording device so you can actually record the music a little bit easier. I really wish that today I was able to play some actual proper songs on this thing, but like with most instruments we feature on this channel, I really have no idea of how to play these things properly. But still, despite that, I think we made some pretty lovely sounds of it. So if you're looking for an instrument to pick up and just make some nice sounds without having really any great knowledge on how to play the instrument, you really can't go wrong with a tongue drum. They are just a tad expensive, so if you're looking to get one as a starter instrument, maybe I don't advise this one. There are cheaper ones, but if you're looking for an upgrade to one that you already have, or you're just looking for one which is going to be the most versatile, you definitely can't go wrong with the Beatroot tongue drum. And with that, I think that's going to be it for another edition of Looted. If you like this video, hit like. If you really like all our videos, hit subscribe. We've got more videos on the way. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I've even got my own personal Twitter, which you can follow me on there. Links in the description of how you can support the channel further with our Patreon page. You can join us on our Discord server, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.
All right. That is very cool. I like that. Now, what I would be curious on is using that as basically a MIDI controller, essentially, right? I mean, using that with the output into a DAW, and then just using it, whether it's a drum replacer or whatever, if you wanted to change the sounds or you didn't like the sound that was coming out of it.
Yeah. If you ran that through the output and you ran it into Melodyne, or you use the drum replacer built into Cakewalk right out of the box, you can assign each sound to a different drum sound.
Now that's very cool, I will say. And again, the not only the changing key, like the changing key with the magnets thing, that was pretty cool. And my guess
isn't that magnet approach like such a slick way to allow it more opportunity?
Yep. You're modulating it by telling it, the magnet tells it, okay, this one's going to be flat. And essentially it makes sense where if you take the major key, you're hitting 8 notes. And if you're playing a minor key, you're playing 8 notes. The difference would be that for the minor key, you want to flat the 3, the 6, and the 7. So if you just have, I would have thought it would have been 3 magnets, where you put one here, and one here, and that tells it, flat the 3, flat the 6, and flat the 7, and now you know which ones to hit going around. And it's still 8 notes that you're hitting, so it's still 8 triggers. They just hit in a different, in a different mode, essentially, is what you're doing. And my guess would be if you were to take those magnets and just, change the positions that you're putting them in each way around, you could be playing in Ione in this way, which would be major. You could be playing in Mixolydian in this way, just by shifting something, rather than having to do pentatonic. That's a whole different thing, and that's why that's, changing all that. Now, I don't know, I didn't look at the prices on that, but I would definitely be interested to see, because that is something that would be very cool to check out. Because hands, to me, they feel pretty natural as far as an input device already, just using hands on hand drums. Like I've played congos before, and it's something where it kind of just makes sense, and doing some drumming, some very limited drumming, as far as getting my hands going is no problem. Trying to tie in a fourth thing, getting 2 hands and a foot, usually fine. Getting that second foot in is where trouble starts.
The feet get involved, that's what fucks me up with drums. I could do the hands.
Something that's simple 2 hands and a kick I can do, but simple 2 hands or if it's too complicated, 2 hands and a kick, maybe give me trouble. But get 2 hands, a kick, and then start getting a little bit of lifting of that hi-hat in, like that kind of thing going on. That gets to where I'm just going along, and all of a sudden I'll lift that foot up, and it's like I'm way over here, and then I'm way over here, and
I'd really like to try that. I'd really like to try that with a traditional drum kit, like having it mapped to different drum instruments. I do hand drums. That's what I want to explore.
Yeah, and with that controller in particular, even if you're not using all 8 of those notes, and again, using the same principle of being able to just change the triggers, using these as a trigger device to make the MIDI note, and then we can change that note to whatever we want later.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do drum beats, just thinking about like 2 buttons on the one side, you know, thumb and fingers, and 2 buttons on the other side, thumb and fingers, and you could just kind of, you know, and you can get like these patterns going where you're just rocking back and forth with the 2 hands rather than trying to, you know, with 2 fingers, you know, the way some people would on a keyboard, you know, 1 2 1 2. Like that's not really efficient. You can do, if you wanted to do something really fast, you can use, you know, 2 fingers in each hand, or 3.
Oh, and with the circular approach to the pads, for me, that seems more natural.
Yep. Yep. And the targets look like they're, you know, are quite sensitive enough and sturdy enough to be hit with those mallets, but sensitive enough to be hit fingertips. I like it. And again, the output jack. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
like, sign me up.
Yeah, that was a great review. You guys should check out Looted over on YouTube. I'll throw the link in here in the chat.
Very
He's
cool.
got great reviews on very unique equipment.
And like I said, I've seen a number of his.
Well
I
worth a visit.
don't think I've seen that one, but I have seen some of the others. And again, some of the equipment that he's reviewed was like not so good. Like this was, we looked at 2 different ones with the drumsticks way back when, where it was just the drumsticks, and the one that was trying to go Bluetooth was not very impressive, didn't do a great job. But the one that was, you know, visual, that was using a camera to see the feet, essentially see when the feet were going to hit with a little reflector that you put on your shoe, that made all the difference for making it much more realistic.
Yeah, and he gives honest and fair reviews. Like, you know, he's not just doing it to push a product for someone. He's looking at it like a true musician would.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, so you can find him over at Looted on YouTube.
Nice. Now, as far as the drum sounds that we might even get in the keyboards, like the pianos are one thing, but when you get to like steel drum, for example, that would be one thing that might sort of mimic some of that sound, but it wouldn't get that same amount of atmosphere, I would put it as he was getting in that. It's hard to say, I guess, but wondering what even I would have as options. Mostly, you know, dealing with the strings and the brass, but I haven't really dealt that much with the drums.
Well, I have used a VST version of the tongue drum, which was kind of cool, but, you know, clicking with a mouse to do it doesn't feel natural to me.
Right.
You know,
And that's where
it's like
getting on the
it's like
keys.
step sequencing where you're punching in your notes, and I want to be able to hit this thing.
Mm-hmm. Goblins. I mean, even maybe the percussive nature of some of these guys.
Yeah, something like that would work great for it.
That's a koto. And that's just A minor pentatonic. Koto.
I'd also like to try timpani with it, you know, for chromatic drums.
Mhm.
That kind of controller would be perfect.
Kalimba.
And the go-go.
That's my go-go.
Well, wake me up before you go-go.
And then the steel drum.
Yeah, and even something like a xylophone, you know, like some of the mallet instruments would work good with that.
Mm-hmm. Steel drum or wood block. Random notes. Because you can almost not tell what note it is.
Yeah, don't have that.
Take care, Astro.
Don't have any patches for that.
No?
Yeah, good to see you, Astro.
What about taiko? There's also not a lot of note to that. It almost sounds like a tom drum high up.
Yeah, the taiko is one that I have actually used a lot just to spice up some of the drum beats on my remasters. It can
Nice.
really have a tribal sound to it.
Down there, I can see that. That makes sense. Where I was playing it.
Hey, Radio Shack keyboard was my first keyboard.
Nice. Radio Shack. Man, think about the last time you walked into a Radio Shack.
I miss Radio Shack.
Or Comp USA, I think was another one that was one I used to go to.
I miss them too. Although Radio Shack held back in the 80s, that's where I got my tapes. That's where I got my batteries.
This was back before it was just a cell phone store.
Yeah, the little scientific kits that.
Yeah, I mean that's
make
what
a radio.
computers that's what computers started. The Heath kit, remember that? Oh, that's what started the whole computer thing. But I actually started with
really wanted a TSR 80.
TRS. Oh, and that one has the tail off at the end. Right off. Just like that. And I should change to the other one, where I'm using the view where we can see what I'm actually playing. That's over here.
All those sevens in there, huh?
Well, just to make just to see what it sounds like at the beginning, because.
Yeah, it's the influence.
But you can't just keep walking it down though, because that's where it starts getting messy. But I mean that is when you are exploring though, that's the thing is a lot of times people are just exploring the 3 and the 5 and not even throwing in others. But if you're at least throw in like the full pentatonic scale. If you're playing major, throw in major pentatonic. If you're playing minor, throw minor pentatonic. So if you're playing C major, you're throwing in the C, D, E, G, A. If you're playing A minor pentatonic, it's A, C, G. Same notes, just shifted. Because it'd be these for major, and those for minor. Same notes though, so it depends on where your focus is. Landing on that C a lot, you're thinking major. Landing on that A a lot, you're thinking minor. Yep. And either way, it's still just all white notes, and it's just those 5 notes. And you can play them up and down the whole, all up and down the keyboard. You can do chords with them. You can do whatever you like, because that's the root and the 3 together sound great. The 3 and the 5 sound great. The root and the 5 sound great. So they all sound wonderful. But like you said, you start throwing in that 7, you got to get careful, because it depends what the rest of the song is doing. But it can make something sound a little bit fancy instead of just sounding like, every other song that's a G and a C and a D or whatever. Like, you're finding a way to play a song in a way that makes it different. Whether you're throwing in the 7, throwing in the 6, maybe just throw in the major and the minor and see how it feels, and then see what, branch out from there once in a while and see what it feels like throwing in the 7 here or the 6 there.
Oh, and there's a good topic one night we can have. How to make things fancy. How to make them sound fancy.
Yep. There you go. Fancy it up. We'll wear bow ties.
Tuxedos.
wear my tuxedo T-shirt.
I don't have a bow tie.
I don't want a bow tie, but and I don't have a bow tie.
I'm not a bow tie guy.
I'm pretty sure that we did at one point have.
You could be a bow tie guy.
oh my God, I could. What about a bowler hat? Like a bowler hat and bow tie? I do still have the cowboy hat in the house.
I was gonna say, if you take that hat you got from the gig, throw a bow tie on it, or one of those Western bow ties.
Yeah, like a skinny tie, yeah, or a bolo tie, I guess it would be. That would work, or a leather tie. That'd be good, a leather tie. But yeah, it depends on where we go too, because even some of the fancy gigs, even a suit with a cowboy hat like that would be appropriate. I mean, it's not as commonly seen in New Jersey, let's put it that way. I mean, there are places where like everybody would be wearing cowboy hats. New Jersey, there are people who wear cowboy hats, but it's not that common. So like going to a place where it's a whole place full of people in cowboy hats, like to me was like a definite change from the usual, because most of the places we go don't have that. But not anything against anything. That's just something that's different from what we usually see in most of the gigs we go to. And it was interesting to see a fancy cowboy hat thing where it was people were wearing suits and cowboy hats, but some people are wearing fancy flannels and cowboy hats. So it's a whole mix of all kinds of stuff. But people are all getting on the mechanical bull, so everybody's having a good time. I almost got on it, but I didn't. I was busy working with the band.
And I always dug the country western dress, like the look and feel of country western.
Yeah.
I could have been a country western guy.
Yeah. Hey, you still can.
An
Man.
alternate life.
You're still a young whippersnapper here, man.
No, it's funny because, my family says I play country, which
sure.
I always found offensive. I don't play country.
Well, the question is, what do they play? Because you play country compared to what they listen to. So what do they listen to? Like Barry Manilow, or do they listen to death metal, or like what's their thing? Because it's not country, probably, right?
Canadian country. It's like country rock.
Mm-hmm. But a little bit further north. Is instrumentation about the same though? A lot of bass and guitar and keys, or are they specific to things like you got a lot of fiddle in there, or what goes on?
Yeah, well, like the Kenny Rogers kind of sound.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Little bit of rock, a lot of country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my country vocabulary is not as good as it should be. Like I've listened to some country over the years, but I never really focused on it. I was always more into the jam bands and whether it's the Grateful Dead and Pink Floyd and Fish and all that kind of thing, or sometimes it's just getting into completely different styles where we're doing Latin grooves today and we're doing reggae grooves the next day, and just doing those kinds of things to both expand the horizons and see what sounds good. Because sometimes throwing on one of my favorite things is throw on a funk thing, and that's one of the things. If you're learning an instrument, or you want to learn an instrument, if it's one of the instruments that you can play funk on, check it out, because a lot of times funk could just be funk in E. So it could be like a 3-4 minute song and it's just in the key of E and there's a groove going on the bass. So if you're trying to work on bass, you could just get into that groove and just focus on that and make that a good little warm up. And if you want to work on guitar, the little chirp guitar, da 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 da, like little chirp chords, you start working on that. You're honing in with your ear on what you're hearing in the song, and that's why I love going back and forth. That's why I have my stuff, kind of everything's within arms. Like these keys that I'm playing on right here are sitting on top of the drum kit that I use. So like if I move the keys out of the way, I could play drums right here on the electric kit. The cymbals are right back here, just out of sight. I got my bass right here where I can reach it. That's the one that's plugged in. My guitar is right there where I can reach it. If I wanted the acoustic, that's back in this case up here. So it's like everything is all right here. So whatever I want to do. And I did break out the guitar pedal. I think I told you about that the other day. The Line 6 Pod Plus. It's like the big floor pod that's got like the 4 selections for the different sounds, and then it's got the whammy or volume rocker.
Oh, the expression pedal.
Yeah, the expression pedal. Yep, that was the word. And so I broke that out, and I was messing around with that some the other day. And it's interesting to see. Like I had forgotten how much particular sounds or particular patches, just like with keys, the particular patches just drive you into like, oh, that reminds me of this song, or that reminds me of this kind of a groove, and you start playing a couple notes, and it's a takeoff, a starting point, where you might not have had any intention to play something funky like this, or Latin like that, or groovy like this, or whatever, but all of a sudden you hit a sound and you're like, oh, that sounds like the beginning of whatever, and you start playing into whatever. Like that's a piano sound, but like if it was Choir Oz on D major, like that might send you somewhere completely different, but if it's
Hey, that's the beginning of Angel Find. I hear Angie's voice coming in.
Indeed. And these are the Choir Ahs, not the oohs. Those are the oohs. They're more percussive. They're more of an up front.
When it comes to the vocal patches, the ahs, I've always had a tough time. I've never had a keyboard that I like the ahs.
They're not bad in the middle, actually. Those sound pretty nice.
Breathy.
True. A little breathy, but I do like the slow rise on them as well. They don't have a percussive front end at all.
But the oohs always work nice.
Nice. Yeah, both those come in more quietly.
they just get carried away with the breath. The only good ooh I have on this one is this gospel one, which kind of adds like a string.
Yeah, it does. I was gonna say that sounds much more stringy.
But
Stringy.
it sounds nice.
Sounds beautiful. This is my Sin Pad one.
Whoa, that had a little modulation there. I liked it. We just need Ange. Hi, I'm Angified. I started Angified Presents. We share the love of music. It has been medicine. I forgot my own line.
Because that one you
know
only
the
had to do a
other
couple
lines.
times.
I
And every other
forgot
time it
the
came up, you're
one
like,
line
I
did.
already checked that. I don't have to check that one this time. It was a fun project though, for sure. And that's the thing is the Radio Shack keyboards. Sometimes even doesn't have to be an expensive piece of gear. It can just be something that works for you. It can be something that gets the sound across. You could be using your computer keyboard to punch in, tracks, drum tracks and keyboard tracks and backing tracks and all that. If it's getting you to where you want to be, to where you can play what you want to play on top of it, that's awesome. Because that's what I like to do, is the thought of like building your own jam tracks, essentially. Like we roll the dice, like the Yahtzee dice. We were talking about that game. Like just take dice and roll them, and whatever comes up on the dice, we play those chords. We can put them into a chord progression and make it work. See what it sounds like and go from there. We could do that later if you want. But it's one of those things where once you do that and you figure out a sound that works, for a background, and then we can also do with the looping pedal. One of these days we'll do a little demo where we get the looping pedal set up, and we can just do little chunk, whether it's the rhythms that are built into the keyboard, or whether it's going into building our own with starting from a shaker or whatever and building it up into a loop using the looper. We can do that kind of thing as well. A lot of ways of making different things work for ideas to start getting spurned, to get started, whether it's from a different sound on the keyboard or whether it's just interacting with different types of instruments than you usually do. That's where keyboard is a lot of fun, because you can hear a lot of different things, like you said, horns, strings, percussive things, drum things, piano things. There's all kinds of options when you get used to what you can do on the keyboard, and when you realize how easy it is to do pentatonics. Even if you just wanted to do horns, for example, you could just go sit down at any keyboard, put on a horn patch, and hit nothing but black notes, and it'll sound good because you're in a pentatonic key. That would be if they're playing in the key of G flat major or E flat minor.
Oh, I'm feeling horny.
There it is. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice little minor groove. And that's where, again, the different types of sounds, like that probably wouldn't work as well with the strings on this end, but maybe...
Well, the sounds sometimes
Thinking
the sounds will lead me into a different direction with the same chords. Like if I'm playing those chords with piano, I don't bounce the same way. On the piano, like that same progression, I want to do something more like totally different mood.
Definitely. And for that one as well, that's all white notes as well. For that being a going back and forth like we were between E minor and B minor, that's just using E, G, A, B, and D. So that's E thinking about minor, and then B minor.
Yeah, and that one can work really good with the electric piano.
Yeah.
Look, I'm almost like Jeff Beck.
Nice. Nice. And that's all it is. Just, not being afraid to just jump in and try something and messing around with it. It's the way to get started, jumping off point. Even just a back and forth like that. And that's where I really like the idea of a looper, is just taking that little groove like that between two chords. If you just get that into your hands with, little boom, 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 boom. Do that once, and then you get in the loop, and then you could just sit there and go back and forth all day. Or a lot of people, they would build it out into, let's say, a 12-bar structure. So like if you were doing, a blues in, a standard blues type of a thing, a 1-4-5 blues, and you're doing, you know what you're doing, and the whole 12 bars, you get it all mapped out. You do that 12 bars in the loop, and then you could just sit there and run on it all day, and it's, it's a whole song structure. And then you could have a whole different section on a different loop where you go into like the chorus section or whatever. So it's fun to be able to jump into something and just have like a whole backing band right off the bat, just like a boom, and you have something happening.
Yeah, the loop will help you to figure out your groove, feel it out. Layering, when you're taking the loop approach, you start to think of build up and starting with like the riff and then adding on top of it.
I'm almost afraid to see what they think of disco. Disco at 90. Now, are you thinking major disco or minor disco? Almost afraid to see what they think of it.
I don't know how to play this. Oh.
G and C at this point. Then we go to T. C.
Feels deadish.
That's not disco. It's more or less just kind of keeping something that goes back and forth.
Oh, you fucking with me.
That's the big finish. Big finish. Now that sounds like the Radio Shack.
Oh, that is a finish.
The disco finish.
Good job, Casio.
So that's the disco idea. And that's disco at 90, so that's, a little bit slower. Normally disco would be faster probably, but for something like that, and again, just having it where you can do that Casio chord mode, which I really like, that really does help with, like you were saying, if you don't know how to play disco or you don't know how to play whatever rhythm this next one is, groove soul, you can hear that coming around. Like, well, what am I supposed to do with that? We say, well, what else? A minor. And then it just kind of fills that in for you. It gives you like at least a pocket to start with. That's just staying in just with A minor the whole time. Let's see what a big finish sounds like.
that's a disco finish.
This groove solo. Groove soul in A minor.
Oh, they really pushed the brass on that finish.
Yeah, I like that. And that's where they're telling you, you should have been using the brass, is what they're telling you. But the other question is, that was minor. We don't know, it would sound totally different in major. Additionally, it would sound different if you're doing a whole progression rather than just hanging out in one key. But that's where, like I was saying before about funk, it is a style where you could just stay in one key all day in funk, and it kind of works. There's a couple of other types of music where you can do that, but not a lot, because a lot of music would just kind of sound repetitive if you're just sitting there doing the same 3 chords all day or the same 1 chord all day. Sounds like nothing's going on. But with funk, there's usually enough happening with the bass line, little chirpy chords, and then somebody doing something else. And then if you got some horns in there for good measure, just throwing in some accents, that really does get things sounding much more full, like one would hope to be.
Trying to get funky.
Yeah. Here's one called Funk. Now at this point, it's just the beat, so it's nothing going on with it. My recommendation would be minor keys, so it could be any minor. Let's see. This is what they're thinking of. What would be really cool is if we could change the different instruments, so you could bring the guitars down, for example. Yeah, the funk big finish got to be.
Damn, they blast out their finish. Oh, and a little slick at
bass
the
groove
end.
at the
Yes, it's a funk finish.
Now, that one's called funk. The next one is actually very funky. And for that one, we'll do E minor. Oh, it's got some tricky timing going on. E minor pentatonic. I went too far down the keyboard and turned to E major. Back to E minor.
I'm trying your octave trick.
Nice, yeah. And what I'm also hearing with the bass. Mostly pentatonic as well. All in that same E minor pentatonic. And that's where, again, with the big finish. Bass solo finish. And then the horns. Very funky. But stuff like that, what I really love about those is that you're staying in, just staying in one key, which makes it very easy to just kind of explore, even if it does sound repetitive, or if it does sound like you're stuck in one box, try to just, try to ignore one of the notes of the 5, because we're only dealing with 5 notes of that pentatonic. So only use 4 of them and see what it sounds like where you're just bouncing those 4, and then leave out a different one and see what that sounds like or feels like. See about not always landing on that 1 or landing on that 5, but also landing on the other of those 5 notes.
Yeah. With an exercise like that, it's just about feeling out the key and all the possibilities.
Yep. And if we just have it on, nothing going in the background, we can do whatever we want with it. And that way it doesn't matter what kinds of, they're not putting a pattern on you, you can just explore it freeform in any key.
Like we're making a theme song for a 70s show. This was used in a Starsky and Hutch episode.
Yes, it was. And some of those bad ones. This is also what we would be doing if it was you get to a song and part of the song and you do the bass break where the bass just drops out, so it's just the drums, and then it's like, well, what do you do when the bass isn't there? And it's like somebody would be trying to do like if you had it in in that same pentatonic, because the pentatonic usually is, again, a safe place to start, safe place to get your groundings, get your bearings, and once you get a feel for being able to do that throughout a part of a song, then you can expand and say, okay, well, now you can play diatonically and try to play after the big finish. More of just a kind of finishing out little finish there.
Yeah, that Casio likes to bang out its finishes.
I like those big horn finishes, though. Those are nice. But yeah, and again, it doesn't matter. And right next to that is rock waltz. It's like, oh, that's going to break your brain going from one of those to the other.
A rock waltz? That's
probably a 1 2 3 1 2 3 actually. And oh my God, at 90, 98, I think we said, right? So this would be have to go a lot faster. So let's bring that up to like 135. And then let's see what they do with it. We'll just say C major, just for some fun.
G. That where
That's the
you went?
question. Is I want to see what it kind of felt like in whichever key. We can do the C, F, and G, or we can do with throw that A minor in there as well, because that way you get that 1 6 4 5. Or since we do a lot of 1 6 4 5, we can switch, and this time we do 2 6 1 5, starting with a D minor, and then A.
Starting with the 2 first.
Yeah, like D minor and then A minor. And then C, G. That's the other thing about this mode on the keyboard. If I just hit single notes down here, I get a major chord. And if I hit a second note, I get the minor chord.
Yeah, I could work with that.
Yeah. So then if yeah.
It's playing the chords.
Yeah, like if I just do the if we're starting with the D minor, I can hit D and E like this. I don't know if you can see what I'm hitting, probably not, because I'm so far down on the keyboard. But I'm hitting these 2 notes, way down, just because it's D would tell it D major, but then a second note tells it to make it minor. So I'm playing D minor and then A minor and then C and then G. But those are just playing with individual notes for the major chords and 2 notes for the minor chords.
There's a song that uses this. It's right on the tip of my.
There's more than a couple. It also is a pretty common one. I like the fact that it's got that bit sadness to it. It's using the 2 and the 6, so those are both minor, so they both have a sadness to them. It's using the 1 and the 5, which are major and have a brightness to them. So it kind of is both sides of it, and so it stays in the minor half first with that 2-6, and then it goes to that 1-5 where it starts off sad, ends happy, and then rolls around.
Yeah, starting with the 2-6 definitely gives it a sadder mood.
Mm-hmm.
And then, whoa, I'm in major. And I'm still in major.
D minor pentatonic would have been there too. But that's the thing is with that, if it was C major, you'd probably want to do C major pentatonic. But that's one where you could switch each chord. So like when we're doing the D minor, I could be playing a D minor pentatonic thing. And then you go to the A, same thing, and then you go to the C major pentatonic. And then the G major. So just having like a little phrase for a major pentatonic and a little phrase for a minor pentatonic, and switching back and forth can get you to where you can get that feel, like right there you were doing. And in each case, we're just using the major or minor pentatonic related to that scale that we were starting.
Telling you, that's what I hear. Does anybody out there recognize that song?
2615. It's all about the bounce too.
Oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Might be an Adele song. Yeah, I feel like it's an Adele song.
It certainly could be, yeah. Wouldn't
Damn
surprise
it,
me a bit.
Adele.
How dare you? And that's again where we're on the stringed instruments. It doesn't really matter what key you're playing in. It's just always the same.
Fire. Oh, it's coming. Fire.
It's coming to.
It's something with fire. Fire in the rain. Yeah, it's like fire in the rain. Something like that. It was a good song. Angie's gonna smack me for mentioning Adele. Sorry,
Why?
Ange.
Hey, any song that you get reminded of, it's good to get reminded of stuff, though. You know, you're reminded of something, and it helps to pick something out. What's up, Johnny? How you doing?
Hey, Johnny.
We're just getting into a little bit of wizardry.
Oh. See, now that's fancy.
Yeah, that's just hammering on 2 notes right next to each other. Yeah. In this case, that's a G and an F.
What do
And then
they
the other
call,
part is just actually doing the
what do they call trills? Is that what
trills, yeah.
trills?
But I also cheat where if I'm just with the right hand, I can just sit here with these two and just kind of do these back and forth real fast. And with the left hand, I can just kind of.
All you guys playing stringed instruments, when you trill, you're all cheating.
Well,
Hard as
but
shit
when they get
to
into
do
the
on keyboard.
when they start getting into tapping though, that's when they start getting really crazy because they start doing like they'll start with that note and hammer on that one and that one. Yeah, I was never very good at tapping. But the idea is that you can get really fast because you're just same thing. You're impacting to make the sound that you want and pulling off to get the sound that you want, so you don't have to be as on it as you are with these.
Yeah, see, trying to get that kind of effect on the keyboard is,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah, even with the lightest keyboard. It's tough to get it smooth.
Son of a bitch, make it look easy.
No, these are like well, here. Let me put it on the ridiculous. Like you can see more easily that it's maybe the other view, maybe this view. No, this one. Then I cheated and came over with the middle finger. I went to the E flat with the middle finger while the index finger was on the E, and then came under. So that's another way of cheating is kind of sweeping like that. But it is a lot faster.
Elon is haunting me again.
He's token.
As long
Elon's
as he
token.
keeps my satellite going.
That's right. Don't toke so much that he forgets how to use the satellite. Otherwise, that'll be a trouble.
Well, every time I see Elon toke, my satellite drops.
Oh, maybe I should turn off the visuals. Maybe that's what's making him smoke. The bass. But that's why we keep the bass hooked up, because it's fun sometimes.
See, if I do it slow,
Yeah, exactly. Starting slow is important because that gets you the feeling and the idea. And once you can play it slow, then you can start to learn to play it fast.
now I
Not
go
all at
into
once
Glen
necessarily,
mode.
though. Yeah. Well, that is
Well,
one of the exercises
again, that's a technique that's harder on the weighted keyboards.
Yes,
Like,
very much,
here-
very much.
Here, I feel like the speed,
Mhm.
the weight of the keys gets in the way of the speed. If I was on that other keyboard, that kind of bounce,
Yep.
it really is easy.
Exactly. And that's one of those things where you'll definitely notice it. And with the weighted keys, you can be more expressive. You can play quietly, not necessarily more easily. It's still difficult to play quietly, but you have more control, I would say, of playing quietly with the weighted keyboard because you have all that weight to work against to try to get that nice soft landing into the notes you're trying to play. Where on this keyboard, no matter how quietly I try to play, it's almost like you're trying to land with the hand where you like when you touch the keys, it's like, okay, that's the beginning. You just want to barely touch them, and then you just kind of sink a little bit of weight into them to get that sound to come out. But it's tricky, and with the weighted keys, it can be more difficult, but it also can give you more levels of expressiveness that you can get with the keys.
Well, it helps when if you are shifting the speed and the velocity. The weighted keys helped for that emphasis and that shift in speed, but they don't
To me,
help
also
when you're trying to go really fast.
I feel like the low end with the weighted keys also sound weightier in some way. Like if you're playing something like the dome and you're landing with like an octave in that left hand, it feels like when it lands, it's landing and it feels solid. It's like when you're getting down into some of the the lower sounds. I forget what sound I'm even in over here. I'm in electric piano. But I turned it all the way off. I hit the wrong knob when I went for that one, that's why. So it's all the way up. Keys as loud as they were before, or is it louder, quieter?
No, they're good.
And this part, not too loud, right?
No, good.
Cool. Hit the wrong volume knob, always good.
That's going off of what you were just doing.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that's why I like jamming with people. I would have never done that on my own.
Yeah. And that's all it takes sometimes. Just a little nudge, a little nugget of something to get started on. And then, I mean, that's how most of the jams that I do in the studio with the other guys kind of get started. It's not like somebody sits down and goes, okay, here's what I was thinking, and they kind of plot it all out. I mean, a lot of times people think that it just starts that way, where somebody brought a finished idea to the studio and said, okay, here's your part, here's your part, here's your part, and go. But it's like, nobody has a fully fledged idea. A lot of times nobody has the full idea. It's like somebody just has, hey, what about this? And somebody's like, oh wait, that sounds like this, oh yeah, and then we can do that. Like everybody builds a little bit to it, and all of a sudden it becomes a thing. And somebody's like, oh, I like what you did there, or no, not so much that. And,
and you're
figure it out together.
You're lucky to get to feel it out with like guys like Jeff and Pepe.
Mm-hmm.
Like their approach definitely is inspiring.
Yep. Jeff and Pepe and Joe and Joey and Cheryl. Yep. We all get together multiple times.
Jeff can just like riff on the fly.
Oh yeah. And that was one when we found we were listening back again to one of the Pepe sessions where we had Angie over, and just listening to some of what was going on. Where we would go take a break, and somebody would go step outside to stretch their legs, and you just hear Jeff noodling. He's playing with the rhythms, trying different rhythms in the keyboard, just get something going on, and then he'll just make something happen in whatever style he happened to be thinking of. And when you come back in, that he could have gone through like 15, 20 different new ideas while we were gone, and I got them all. I usually would get them recorded so that I could have them to look back on later. And now I've got 10, 15 years of recordings to go back through, and just I can spend all the time in the world and just go back and listen to those jams and hear what kinds of experimenting he was doing, what kinds of stuff he was working with, little nuggets that came out that would be fun to work with or put into my playing, because I would love to add most of what Jeff does into my playing, just listening to how he approaches things and what kinds of ideas come to him from different sounds and from putting different things together. A lot of the things that he likes to work on a lot of times are the rhythms, because some of the rhythms, whether it's whether the Latin rhythms, for example, not necessarily a samba or a rumba, but things in those styles like happen to get a nice feel to them and get something grooving when he just starts jamming out to that.
Yeah, he has no problem with those like Latin-based rhythms. He just goes nuts.
Yep. Now, like they had New Orleans rock and roll and R&B and big band. I mean, there's a bunch of different options up in here, but it's like once you get up to past the waltzes, like tango, bossa nova. Bossa novas are always good. Like I'm a fan of bossa nova just from the general feel. In this case, it's kind of a faster. This is at like 135.
Yeah, that really encourages a different kind of bounce.
And even at that speed, like that might be too fast even. Like it's doable, but like it might even feel better. I'm gonna bring it down to like 110, let's say. This is 110. Yep. And that gets a whole Stand By Me feel for sure.
Oh, totally.
And that's where you got to break out the bass.
Stand by me, Caribbean style.
Forgot I had my wrong camera on.
that was a progression in my first band that I used to play with. We had a song. It was a joke song originally. You know, I was just playing that like, and my singer started coming up with words. It was called "Running for Your Life." We're running for our lives. You're running.
Nice.
We're running for life. It was a funny ass song.
Yep. Now that's Bossa Nova 1. Let's see if Nova 2 sounds. See, that one gets you the high bell sound, but that might be too much bell. Big finish.
Oh, big finish on that one.
Yeah, and with no chords either. Big finish with no chords. Sounds a little different.
Well, the beaver agrees.
The groundhog. He saw his shadow. So 6
the
more
groundhog.
weeks of winter. Don't drive angry.
He kind of looks like a beaver.
There it is. And what's funny is in this view, you can't even tell that I have the bass in my hand. Can't even tell I have the bass. I could just be like stealth playing bass. You wouldn't even tell.
Well, you look like you're
But the other
playing
view,
with
you can't,
something.
because it's right there.
Playing with...
I love that one, Ange. That's like my favorite. That's the squirrel sweeper, I call him.
Oh, man.
Sweeping with that tail. I said, come on, man. Come at me, bro.
This year, squirrels are definitely going to die.
I think so. Especially with ones like that one. Cheeky bugger. I'll freaking wreck you. Swear me. You what, mate?
Yeah, that squirrel got attitude.
Most definitely. Now, we also have a couple of other videos that we were going to go through tonight, actually.
Yeah.
And I think...
This one, what is it called? The Andalusian cadence.
Andalusian. Now the area,
That how
like
you
some people say it that way because in the region, I believe, some of it is pronounced with they pronounce the C's as THs, or like Andalusia, but it could also just be Andalusia,
Well,
or the Andalusian
cadence. A cadence is what? Cadence is a progression.
Basically a progression, but it's a to me I would consider it as a finishing, or as a way of resolving. Let's put it that way, because your cadence coming back to one, like we talk a lot about the
So it's like
the four
these finishes
4 5
on the
1.
Casio. Like
Yeah,
those finales are like like
Sort of,
cadence.
but it's also cadence can also be a progression, just like you were saying, like 4-5-1. That's a I believe they call it the plagal cadence or the standard cadence, where you're going from the 5 to the 1. Like it's the last two things you're doing is from what to the 1. Like that would be what the cadence is talking about.
The finishing, the 5-1.
How you're ending it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Those are some relaxed squirrels. Get a room. I have days like that though, where you just want to just be laid out like that, like
So you want a happy ending?
Now, someday I'll tell you all the story of how I caught a flying squirrel in this apartment building with a fishing net. So we'll talk about that sometime. Not today, but that's a story for another day. And what does he got there? It's a Quito? He's styling. Pigs in a blanket? He got something going. Got something going on.
It looks like a Slim Jim.
It does?
A wrapped up Slim Jim.
I was gonna say, it looks like breakfast, man. He's eating better than me.
He's the stoner squirrel. That squirrel has been smoking.
That's because he's sitting in your face, like you just try to touch my breakfast, man.
Like,
I will
yeah,
wreck you.
I was watching Talking IT and I got the munchies.
Pass it over, man. Don't eat the whole thing. Bossa Nova. So the Bossa Nova 2, I think it's just too much on the bell. Like if I had a way of like toning down that bell just a little bit, like that would be better. But even Bossa Nova 1 has that same kind of a groove, the same feel to it, without having to have quite as much bell up in the top.
Well, and that does, all those drums on there are MIDI. Like you could slurp up the MIDI and turn off the bell.
Yep, exactly.
The
And
nice
or
thing
even
about
just
getting it all as MIDI, you have individual instrument control.
Yep. And in my first attempt to do some of that, I basically recorded the rhythms in here at speed 120, let's say. I just recorded, a minute of each of the different rhythms into BandLab, just so that I would have a reference that I could go back to if I didn't have this keyboard on hand, because I'm going to bring this back to the studio at some point.
Well, you have your MIDI Uno. You have the Uno.
That's what I have connected.
Yeah. So if you take the MIDI out of that and you go into the MIDI in on the Uno, set up a MIDI track on channel 10 of your Cakewalk.
The MIDI Uno is what's hooked up to it right now. That's how we have Meticulous working. Is basically that's what this keyboard is plugged in with to get the Meticulous working.
Those drum patterns are actually going in MIDI.
Yep.
To your computer. So if you're recording the drum pattern over in Cakewalk, you can literally go in and remap any of the beauty of channel 10 with MIDI is every key is a different drum sound, and you can easily remap one drum sound to any other sound. The highs and the bells can be either pulled back in volume or changed to a wood block or something else.
It's also one of the kind of cheats that you could do. Also, is let's say you can't do double kick, or you don't have a double kick pedal, and you want to get some thunderous machine gun kicks going. You can just trigger both of the toms, let's say, and just with the sticks, and then later on change that with the triggers and make those all kick drums. So you can do stuff like that. He says your mic is breaking up. Sounds okay over to me.
Elon's been smoking. My satellite probably fucked up, and it's probably fucking my mic up.
Sounds good, man. I think it was the squirrel. The squirrel started munching on your breakfast over there. He got you all distracted.
Or Bobby. Looking at you, Bobby.
Maybe a little bit of breakup. I think it's only if you get real close. Like it might just be a spiking thing.
Testing. I'm Glenn. Can I sound like Glenn?
Oh, there you go. That sounds good.
Well, that is the sweet spot. That's why I went here.
You go right into the inside and say, and now, coming up on Talking IT with Glenn and Tony.
This particular mic has a very obvious sweet spot, and it's right where the label is.
Nice. So at least you know that that's where you either want to be or want to avoid being, depending on what kind of sound you're looking for.
Unfortunately, it's hard to get it set up here where...
Well, the thing is, you don't have to be in there all the time, but that's the thing is, like, if you wanted to, same idea, if you wanted to, lean in and tell the audience something confidential, you can get in there and say it.
I'm talking sexy to you now.
The Alesis sample pad, nice. Yeah.
I want to be like Glenn.
Be like Glenn. Everybody wants to be like Glenn. But not everybody can get their voice down here.
No, that takes years,
Feet.
of growth.
Feet of growth. Just get up there, you drink your milk and get up big and strong and get to be 6'6" like me, and then you get a nice deep voice that comes along with it. But when I switch into it a lot of times,
A day.
like normally my normal speaking voice is still pretty deep, but when like if somebody doesn't hear me, and a lot of times I'll I could either make it louder or make it higher or make it lower, like if I need somebody to hear me. So a lot of times I'll just drop it down and I'll repeat myself like this, and they're like, whoa, don't get mad, man. And it's like, I'm not mad.
There's a good example of how, when we're talking about singing, projection, and dynamics,
Oh yeah.
that's how everyday talking can help you actually to practice singing, and how singing can help you to speak better.
Yep. And people do listen. I mean, that's one thing, Bobby, is that having a podcast voice 24/7. Like, I literally have people who I've never seen before in my life just come up to me and they hear me say something. And they're like, "Are you on the radio? Like, you should be on the radio." And I'm like, "Well, I do have a show right here."
I play a radio talk show host on TV.
Yep. But yes, I am thinking more about doing things with my voice. And one of the things that had been, I'd like to do voiceover. That's one thing that's going to be big. But one of the ones, especially for this year, like 2023, is going to be the year of getting some voiceover started.
Public speaking. When a company needs to tell a bunch of people or their employees stuff, great public speaking. I mean, you might be giving bad news to those employees, but
guys, this sucks. But
if it sounds soothing, I don't care that I'm getting fired, because Glenn sounded beautiful telling me.
Y'all lost your jobs, but we bought a box of munchkins, so knock yourselves out.
Cool, some donuts.
Oh no, the donuts are extra. Munchkins.
Oh, son of a bitch.
And no coffee. Sorry, there's just water. Oh, what happened? No, you got to have coffee. If you're going to have donuts and munchkins, you must have coffee.
I would imagine you would have that in your contract. Glenn would never work. You'd be like a diva. Like, I'm not going on stage until you
if my
make
coffees
me some
aren't lined
fucking coffee.
See, that's the thing, though, is I do have that switch where, like, okay, maybe it's coffee most of the day, and coffee would be fine. I could do coffee all day, every day, no problem. But, like, if I'm going to go and there's somewhere where, like, we're out at a bar or something, then I'll switch to beer mode, no problem. And it's like, okay, now it's beers. And, like, I'll line up the beers behind my bass amp. Like, I was telling somebody the other day with the setup I have, the Hartkey bass setup that we talked about. I have a 115 cabinet at the bottom and a 210 cabinet on top of that, and then the bass head on top of that. But the 210 cabinet is not as deep as the 115 cabinet. So if I line them up, the feet can lock in the front corner or the back corners. And if I lock them in on the back corners, then I got a little shelf of 3 inches on the front, but I lock them in on the front. So I've got a little shelf of 3 inches on the back. So I can just line up beer bottles along the back on top of the 15.
Well, be careful with open beers around music equipment, because
Oh, yeah.
I have seen music equipment get lost.
Yep. In this
because
case,
of a beer.
in this case, it's like my bass stack is like back against the wall or near the wall or whatever. It's like in the back, and I'm usually not rumbling so much that they're going to rattle themselves off of there. And it's a carpeted bass cab, so they just sit on there. What's up, Salvatore?
Plus,
How you
don't
doing?
want to lose it.
And Bobby, we see you. Yeah, but I mean that's the thing is, like, a lot of times
Salvatore.
I can't get to the bar. Like if I'm playing, it's going to be a whole set. It's going to be 45 minutes till I get back up there probably. So it's like when I'm getting started, it's like I want to have a sip in between songs, and if I'm going to have a sip in between songs, by the time I get to my 10th song, I got no beer left. So got to have a couple lined up.
That's why a pitcher is more useful.
It would be, but you want to talk about what you don't want near electric equipment. A pitcher's even worse. Because if you're going to have a problem, a pitcher's going to be worse. And people like to put stuff on the floor, but then, I mean, to me, the thing about the floor is people leave stuff on the floor at the end of the night. And then we go start wrapping cables. You pull a cable and you might knock 3 drinks over. And it's like, why did you leave them there? So, yeah, I'm not a fan of the floor as a place to leave them. Everybody should have their mic stand drink holder so that they can have their drink right there in their mic stand. So it's right there, boom, they can get to it no problem. They don't have to lean anywhere or go anywhere or on the floor behind this or over that.
If you can point me to a cup holder for a mic stand, I will order a couple of them.
Oh, absolutely. I could show you several designs. I have one.
I wish I had
right
that back in the 90s, when it really mattered.
The one that they have that I like the design on the most is just imagine the mic stand is, you know, straight up and down doing its thing, and the drink holder, think of it like a little basket that's over here, and like it kind of goes around and it kind of grabs around this, and just the weight of it keeps it on there because of the grip, you know, the rubberized grip or whatever that it's made from. And once you put weight in it, you're not putting any more weight than a drink, so it's just, you know, it's strong enough to hang on. So it's literally just, you twist it on there and it just sits there, and then when it's time to go, it just twists right off. It's not like you don't have to lock it in there. It's not bending any metal anywhere. It's just literally, you know, wraps around exactly what it should.
I'll buy 2 of them. One
Yeah,
for
I've seen
my
several
main-
designs. Yeah.
My main beer and one for my backup beer.
And that's the thing is, you know, sometimes we have a gig where we don't really have the room. So I was joking with Mike saying I just got to get myself one of those hard hats and, you know, put, you know, 1 beer on each side with the, you know, the straws coming down, and I'll be in good shape, because then it doesn't matter where I am. But I will block a lot more of the view. I mean, I already block enough of the view being 6'6", so I'm usually in the back or against a wall.
Yeah, you throw the hat on top of there, you're hitting the ceiling at that point.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And that's the other thing about that cowboy hat is if I put a cowboy hat on, I'm already 6'6" with no hair up here. So like the top of the shiny spot up here, that's 6'6". So if I put a hat on top of that, then we're already like, you know, pushing 7 foot with some of that. And in fact, that it looks bigger already. I mean, you see me come down the street, you'd be freaking leaning back like, whoa, who's this huge guy coming? But it is, you know, I'm 6'6". I'm not enormously huge, but I am quite tall.
Well, you're closer to 7 at this point than you are to 6.
Just about. Hanging out right there in the middle.
Is the Glen half full?
The Glen is half full, yes.
It's 6'6'1".
But I've always been quite pleased with how tall I am, and it's not like, you know, I've never been one to hold that over anybody or anything. Like, I like the fact that I was born big, but there are aspects of it, like, you know, you end up with back and knee problems more frequently than other people would have them because you're so tall. If you ever went to try to go to a hotel or a motel or anywhere where you're sleeping somewhere other than your home, it is not designed for somebody who's 6'6". Like, I've had places where I went to like a bed and breakfast somewhere, and my feet were literally sticking through the footboard that was like, you know, like bars or whatever. I had to put my feet through there, sticking like a foot out of the bottom of the bed. Otherwise, I couldn't fit. And I was like, this is just ridiculous. And the other thing is sinks. Like, if you go to, like, not that doing dishes is one of my favorite things in the world, but like doing dishes is one of my least favorite things in the world because sinks are always too low. So in order to do them, I'm like hunched over all the time, and it just kills my back after like 2 minutes.
Plus, you're always going to be, in band pictures, you're always going to be the dude in the back.
Band pictures, every single class picture.
Every single one I have
every
seen
single
of you,
class picture, yeah.
You're in the back.
Oh yeah, back center. I mean, that was the other thing. We talked about that the other night. Between 8th grade and freshman year of high school, I went up to 6'3". So I went from 5'9" to 6'3" before I started high school. So the first day of high school, I'm already 6'3", 235 pounds at that point. So I'm a big boy.
The wrestling team must have been looking at you.
They wanted me for wrestling and they wanted me for football, but my parents were like, no. Like, I did try for freshman basketball, but by then my knees were actually starting to act up because I grew so fast that year. My knees were just like, no. Like, you're not having any of this. So I actually had to stop with some of that. I did go back on and do the weight man track and field stuff, like shot put, discus, and high jump. I did junior year. And then senior year, I had no classes left to take. Like, I had taken all the classes that I could take. And my senior year, I was getting done at noon. So like 12:15, I was out of school. So I would leave and go do something else. I think I had a babysitting job where I would go drive over to my friend's house to like pick her niece up from school and like bring her home and babysit her until her mom came home. So that was always fun.
Glenn the babysitter.
Ooh, a music kick. How highlight a specific color in a video? I think we're talking about masking. I think we're talking Tony's expertise here.
Oh, Salvatore wants monitors.
Mm-hmm.
I got a shitload of them.
He does. Depends on which view you're looking at there, but yeah, he's got tons.
But he's right though. 4, if I could pick like what exactly I need, 3 bare minimum on my music machine, but 4 is kind of perfect because there's an extra one. With 4, there's one that can just be whatever. But 3 is a necessity with the music machine because I need to see my VSTs on one, I need to see my mixer on the other, and I need to see my tracks on the main screen.
And from the different views, you can see that you have way more than 4. It's
Well,
like I can see 7 right there.
That's the
in that view.
programming workstation and video editing. Video editing, you can't have enough. Like
Mhm, yeah.
every screen can get used.
The other one that would be similar for that would be when people were in, like I'd worked in financial markets and see people who were doing day trading and equity trading and things like that, where they needed tickers and screens that are literally just this one's monitoring these things and you're watching for something to flash, whatever.
And that's originally what, like, all those ones over there, when I was living in Connecticut and dealing with cryptocurrencies and stuff, at least 4 or 5 of those would be constantly monitoring, certain coins of the day. And because in that kind of market, it's all about timing. Like, if you're watching and you're paying attention, 11:30 in the morning, whoa, the pattern just happened. Okay, go click here, get back to work.
Well, technically, you just did get back to work by saying click here. If you do it right, that could be work. That could be your job.
And eventually, I figured out how to programmatically look for those things. So I don't need to watch anymore, because if I actually wanted to do something when something happens, once you
can
learn
set up
how
triggers.
to set up triggers, you don't have to sit there for 8 hours and watch all day.
Yeah, sometimes you want to keep an eye on things anyway. Some people don't want to leave things out of control too long, because there could be things other than that signal that they didn't expect, but they would want to make a different act on, or a different action because of.
Yeah, there are times where you do want to watch because you're watching for. It's like this comet, it's a once in a moment kind of thing, and you want to be watching for that. But if those comets were flying by every day and during certain times of the day, I wouldn't want to be out there all day waiting to see, is it coming, is it coming? I would set up a camera and watch, let the camera watch.
Sounds like Bobby's trying to do some video work. He's got Picasa. That's one of the programs that's out there to work with graphics, right? But as far as backgrounds,
Picasa is an image editor.
Now for white and black, like it sounds almost like you're talking about foreground or like color 1 and color 2 in paint would be like black and white, for example. So you could have this with left click and this would be right click. But if you're talking about backgrounds, you're talking about grabbing individual layers, like that might be something you'd want to talk about as far as breaking images down into layers, but it depends which image editor you're using, whether you're even looking at layers.
Yeah, and technically, if you're dealing with a standard image, it's probably going to be in RGB, which means you see white and black, but the image itself, the image format, is probably in red, green, blue, or CMYK. The only time you're really dealing with white and black is if you are dealing with a black and white file, which you can get rid of all the color. It makes for a very small image file, but you basically get 2 colors. Which is great sometimes if you're doing logo design and
He does say he's in a video though, so that's could be something totally different too.
Oh,
what I'm reading back up there.
You trying to make a black and white video, Bob?
Highlighting a specific color in a video, and he says his options are black and white.
That can be fun when you start doing masking and things like that.
Yep. And again, it depends what app you're using as far as what controls you're going to see. But most of them operate in a similar fashion, and things about layers and things about being able to mask and things about chroma keys and things like that. There are all things that you'd have to start looking at when you're looking at that kind of thing.
Yeah, and once you can chroma key your video, then it doesn't matter which color you're dealing with. You tell the chroma to filter that color, and things get really fun. I can't believe how easy it is to green screen, these days. I was trying to do that shit in the 90s where the digital technology wasn't there yet, and on the analog side, green screening with tape was a real bitch.
Yeah. And that's the thing is we're even Snapcam, with the filters that we were using there, like you had one that was, I don't have a green screen, but try to green screen and it would do fine, as far as, whether it's replace the background or in most cases it would do fine because it can differentiate between what's moving in the image and what's not. So what should be the background and what shouldn't. And even if it was like, to me, like AI.
A lot of these new cameras are picking up distance. The depth of field that they're picking up is how they're green screening so good, because if your background is far enough away, it's
I like that GIF conversion. That's a nice one. Doing the mocap. That's
what I'm talking about. I want the suit You remember who had the orange? Jake Zeke has that orange bodysuit, and he has the painted green screen wall.
So you can be a total floating head if you want.
Yeah,
And then and you get the hood, so it's like you just have this much poking out.
if you get enough sensors, you know, when you start using the LED sensors all across the bodysuit,
Yeah.
you rig up a whole skeletal system.
And you can easily make the wireframe from there, sure.
Yeah, then you can start breakdancing in 3D.
Because that is my specialty, you know.
Oh man, we got to get you breakdancing.
The windmill. Get me doing the windmill. Ange likes to see memes, huh? You like this one though, right?
Oh, damn. He's better than you, and he learned.
That's always one of my
from-
favorites.
It's like that.
The other one would
commercial
be,
where the dad finds the kid's weed. I learned from you, Ange.
I picked up my bad habits from you. The other one would be, you know, you can cross the eyes and like either look at this one or at that one. Like this way.
Oh my God.
Or that way.
I didn't know you could do that.
It hurts. No, just kidding.
It hurts. To see
But
you do it.
your face will get stuck that way if you keep doing that. So you got to make sure you don't keep doing that. It would look like a windmill, yeah. And that's the thing is I don't do that because you know how much area you have to clear out to make room for a 6'6" guy to do the windmill. That's not like, okay, everybody step back. It's like, okay, everybody like get up on something like off to the side so you don't get whacked with a size 15 shoe as I come spinning around because nobody wants that.
Did you ever try breakdancing?
I mean,
Could you do a windmill?
You could loosely
used to
define try. I probably, I mean, if I had a smooth surface and like, you know, had like EMTs on standby, like I could probably break into a windmill. I mean, I used to do the main things would be things like basketball and skiing. I guess would be the one that would be the most relevant, like skiing, ski jumping, you know, going down black diamond trails, being able to use your body in the way that you come down, you know, on skis, make it so that you have good body control. And that's where things like surfing, like I've never really gone out surfing, but I feel like if I went out surfing, I would do well with it just because of skiing and snowboarding and the amount of balance and the amount of similarity to those types of skills.
And if
I was always very good on a bike and a skateboard. So
if you can listen to music, because I used to have a Discman and a Walkman back in the early 80s. If I was skiing, I had music blaring and I would bounce into the rhythm. It was a lot like dancing.
See, in some cases, like some people really like the moguls, for example, where they're just, you know, each mogul, they're just like ba-ba-boom, 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 and just like diving into each one and absorbing all that force with the knees.
Moguls and metal. You throw on a good fucking metal track and go down moguls.
For me, I'll take that mogul hill, but rather than ba-boom, 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 and absorbing as much force as I can from each one, I would usually be skirting around the underside of each mogul and just trying to navigate through there without the impact. Because the knees, again, knees not being my best thing, I don't want to go like ba-bam, ba-bam, ba-bam on each and every one. I know how to do it. I understand the physics behind it. I've done it and been like, oh, shit, my knees are not happy about that. So like the next time I was like, I can go down this trail. I just got to do it this way, this way, this way. And then I just get down nice and smooth.
Yeah, if you don't have good knees, you don't want to be doing that kind of bouncing because by the end of the day, you might break them.
And that's the thing is like the other thing about being 6'6" and working, you know, doing the roadie work that we're doing now. Like there's plenty of times where I just pick up a subwoofer from over here and put it over there. And like no big deal. I mean, the subs, they're big and they're heavy. Like, people see me pick this thing up and they're like, "Holy shit!" And they like step back shocked. And it's like it's not a big deal. It's, you know, we do this all the time. Like pick up, you know, the one sub and put it over there, or you pick up both of the mains, like one in each hand, and just take off walking. And the mains are like, you know, 3.5 feet tall and, you know, big around each. So when they see you, you could almost fit me in there if I were like crunched in tight. You know, it's like that's how big the mains are. But I can just sit there and just rock them back and just pick them up and go. So like being, you know, that I can do that kind of stuff, that's all strength in the legs mostly that you're able to do that stuff with. So that's how, you know, I would be able to do a lot of the skiing stuff and basketball and things like that. You know, I can just about dunk as far as this. I can get up just high enough to dunk. I haven't played basketball in a long time, but I'm actually in better shape with my legs now than I was, you know, 10 years ago from all the, you know, roadieing and other things that I've been doing. So
Oh,
it would
and
be
they
interesting
had
to get back out there and try it.
They had to be scouting you for basketball before high school.
A little bit, little bit.
Look at this big ass dude who's about to come into the high school.
Yeah, but then my knees were not very good, so it was not time to do that. Like, it wasn't worth the whole going in and doing surgery because I hadn't finished growing yet. So it was like we were gonna let me finish growing before we do anything with surgery wise. And by the time I got to be 6'6", we were already out of sophomore year or whatever. And then going into junior year, I went and did the shot put, discus, and high jump instead of basketball. So just went out and did that. So a little experience with a couple different things.
Yeah, and those throwing shit can be fun.
It was a lot of fun, actually. The shot put, it was interesting because most of the people were teaching like a slide style, like the old school way of doing a shot put.
That's the one with the ball you spin around.
Yeah, I have it right over there, actually. Big lead ball.
Thankfully, you never accidentally threw it in the wrong direction.
No, but that's the thing, is usually you'd start facing the wrong direction and like slide backwards, turn and throw. But it was like, it seemed inefficient. And when I saw people do it in like the Olympics or whatever, they were always doing the spinning style where they're starting facing the wrong way again, but they do like a spin around, and then zoom and send it out that way.
It's about how many spins.
Exactly. So getting the footwork and getting all that worked out, and that was kind of cool, both for the shot put and for the discus, because at one point I just had like something clicked with the discus one day where I had been throwing all right, and learning what I was doing and everything. The biggest thing with that was thumb pressure. Like, you have to be pushing down on the top of the discus to keep it flat. Otherwise, it goes kind of like a frisbee. You throw a frisbee and it'll go up and kind of curve off to the side and whatever. But you don't get maximum distance unless it stays flat and goes as far as it can. So trying to do that, and then the one day, like, all of a sudden I started throwing like 20 yards farther than ever before, just from figuring something out, where it was about the wind up, where you're basically winding up the wrong way, cocking yourself back this way and then coming through and spinning and throwing. And the whole thing was I was actually starting from back here and already unwinding before starting to even spin at first. And that's where I was losing all my speed. So I just had to remember to go all the way back and like stay back as I'm spinning around and then launch. And I was getting like tremendously more distance than I was the first. I was like throwing over the coach and he's like, what the hell? Because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm throwing way farther than I was.
And the discus is like Captain America's shield style, right?
Sort of, yeah. It's smaller. It's more like a frisbee or a plate, but it's heavy. So it's like made of wood and it's thick.
Attitude.
But you throw it with attitude, and you throw it from like with your hand is on top of it. Like if you were holding a plate, like if you're holding a plate, you're like kind of your hand is on top of it, and you're holding it with the edges and spinning around and launching it out the back of your hand, kind of.
See,
hard to describe.
I'm surprised you didn't do javelin.
They talked about javelin. Actually, we didn't have anybody in our school to do javelins, so at one point, as we were doing the last couple of meets of the year, doing the shot put in the discus, the coach asked us to go over to the javelin for this one. Like, there were people competing in javelin over there, but we weren't. He was like, "Oh, just go over and take a look at it and see if it's something you want to do next year."
Well,
So I went and took a look. I was like, that would be fun.
Spears.
Yeah. And it's all about the
why
approach
not?
on that too. Yeah, it's about the approach and the technique, and that's the other thing I liked about high jump was it all did come down to the technique also. And being as tall as I am, being able to hurdle, jump over something that's 6 feet in the air. If you looked at me, you'd be like, you can jump over something that's 6 feet in the air, and it's like, well, yeah.
You mean with the stick?
No, that's pole vaulting. The high jump is just you just run and you do the flop. You flip over backwards.
Snap that stick.
That's one of the reasons I didn't do that, because I felt that I probably would snap that stick. I did know a guy who did pole vaulting, and he was amazing. Like, just the fact that you go completely upside down, like you bend that stick in half, and you're sending your feet straight up first.
Yeah.
And then your whole body
right
over it,
weight,
and then you're letting go from here.
If you're the right amount of weight and you can get that stick to snap back just enough, how you slingshot over.
It's some amazing physics.
That's how
that's
they
involved
keep
there.
getting higher and higher.
Yeah, better stick mechanics as far as the amount of spring in the stick. I'm sure is all regulated. Like, you can't just show up with a stick that launches you into orbit. That kind of thing. But it's all stock car racing essentially as far as the materials. But the high jump, there's nothing. I mean, it's just the bar is this high, and you have to get over that bar without knocking it off as you go over, because it's not like mounted there. It's just
the
rested
ones
on top.
Yeah. They just jump
do the flop.
over it, and they kind of bend themselves.
Yeah, that was the one. So like you run up, you run alongside it, and then you kind of launch yourself so that your back goes over the bar, and then you're trying to pull your butt and your feet over without hitting it. And the bars, at that point, I think it was 5'10" was the starting height. So like at 5'10", you'd have to clear that, and that would be like you had to clear, I think, 6 foot then to be to qualify or whatever for whatever meets that you were in, and then it's against whoever else was there. And I was never like amazing at it, but just I'm so big that I was able to essentially hurdle the bar to, like throwing myself over the bar that high wasn't as big a deal as it is for most people who are trying to throw their hips from, 3 feet off the ground over this 6-foot bar. I'm trying to throw them from 3.5 feet off the ground. So I don't have to throw it as far,
We're going to get you in the Olympics.
Yeah, right.
or the Ange
Getting in my game shit. Time for
together these games. We're going to make an Ange Olympics. We're going to make Glenn jump.
Time for the training montage. Da, 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 da. Get my Rocky on. No, that would be amusing. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure that most of my I'm realistic enough to know that most of my athletic days are behind me, but at the same time, I would still try just about anything. I would still play basketball, tennis, volleyball. We were talking about scuba diving and doing the jet ski thing, or the one where the fly board where you're like floating over the water. Like I definitely got to try that.
I would still try that.
I definitely got to try that.
Skiing.
I'll ski anytime.
I love skiing too, but I haven't gone in 10 years, and I'm afraid that if I was to go, I can't ski gently. Like I'm the guy who wanted to jump
too aggressive
off cliffs, and I think I would still do that, and I don't think my body could take it.
See, for me, like one of the things, even though I could go down the Black Diamonds, there were times where I would go over to like one of the green trails that just happened to like snake way back and forth. It was a little narrow trail that was usually empty because nobody was on it, because it was very, very flat. It was kind of a boring trail. You're not zooming along. But I'm out having fun. So I'm just kind of floating along, and like sometimes I'll just turn completely sideways, and I'll be going like sideways down the slope. It's only like the slope's only 8 feet wide, and like my skis are like more than 6 feet long, and I'm just going sideways like through the little whatever. People see me come around a corner sideways, like what? It's just like whatever, I'm just out here having fun. What, I mean, I don't have to be going a million miles an hour. I don't have to beat anybody down. I mean, I was usually just there to have fun, be outside, commune with nature, and those trails are particularly good for that because it is so quiet. When you are skiing on one of those trails by yourself, there's the sound of your skis sliding, and it's just like silence everywhere because the snow sucks the sound in.
Yeah, and on beautiful. Those trails, I do tricks. That's where you do ballet. And
yeah, and that's where you see the little things on the sides, where you see somebody went into that bush and came up.
Yeah, my first set of skis were, they were like ballet skis. They were designed for like
the exact opposite of mine.
And
mine were 207s, so that's more than 2 meters long. So the ballet skis are little short ones usually. Yeah, little short skis. And that's the thing, is I could imagine, like, even if I lost my skis and just started coming down the trail with just my boots, those boots were as big as some of the people's like super ballet skis, because I've seen people on there with like itty bitty little skis that were almost more like ice skates, which is kind of crazy. But when they were using just the little ones like that, they're able to maneuver more easily. And with the longer skis like the ones I had, you're able to go faster if you were trying to do whether slalom or you're trying to do downhill and trying to race. You can go faster with the long skis. But the little ballet skis, like the ones that were the size of my boots, those are like super tiny. And I never tried those. And same thing, like some people would go without poles. And for me, I always had poles.
I didn't like poles either.
I learned how to ski with poles, and I thought about trying without, but I didn't really want to be up there and like feel like a total doofus without the poles and like falling all over myself. But I was always good at skating. Like even with those long ass skis, if I'm on flat ground and I need to go uphill, I can just skate like I'm ice skating and have no problem going up and getting where I'm going.
Yeah,
but I do always like having poles to just park.
The only time I liked poles was moguls. With moguls, you kind of have to have poles in order to steer.
Even a lot of people think that you're putting weight on them or whatever, like crutches, but it's more just poking and bouncing off, like boom, that's solid, boom, that's solid, boom, that's solid, and, doing that kind of thing. And I get that. And the other place would be, again, if I like have to stop somewhere, just taking the poles and like wedging them into like where my hips are, for example. Just you park and you just kind of put the poles down, and that'll kind of it's like putting on the emergency brake on. You don't have to worry. You can be sitting a little bit pointing downhill and not have to worry about sliding away from where you're standing.
Yeah, poles can help you to stop when you need to stop and nothing else is working.
Yeah, the other thing that I would do for that would be basically just to spin around, face uphill, and have the skis way out wide. Because again, with 207s, these skis are so big that if I have them out in a V, this way, like I'm not going anywhere. Like I don't care how steep your shit is. I could like park on the side of a fucking mountain with the skis in. It could be steep enough where my face is on the ground, and that'd be all right. But you wouldn't want to hang out there for long, though. Uphill, you might be taller than me, Ange, but it'd have to be a pretty steep hill.
and taller than you. You could put two Anges on top of each other, and I think you could tap his head at that point.
Well, we do have a picture from the last time over Bill's house where I gave her my bass to hold on to. So, like, the bass that you see me playing right over here, like, there's a picture, if I hold the bass up and you saw me standing and holding the bass, and then you saw a picture of her holding that same bass, you'd get an idea of the difference. It looks a lot bigger in her hands than it does in mine. The old 5-string. And I always turn it back down once I put it down, just to make sure. But it's never far away. But yeah, we should get a winter sports trip going sometime. And that's the thing, is even if people don't want to go skiing or whatever, that would be like even the tubing. It. Like the tubing.
You guys want winter? Come up here.
Tony's got winter. Did you build the ski slope yet, or the trail lift?
Some.
The lift. You gotta get that ski lift going.
Yeah,
either that or even like a tow rope.
There's a couple of them around here.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
My brother's got a season's pass to the mountain next to us.
Nice. Yeah. And that's what I always liked. Is again, I'm an explorer, so to me it would be to try all the different trails that are on a mountain, because I would see that there's black diamonds, and that's where I would go there for the challenge. And if like we had a group of people together, they would all want to go right to the the most challenging slopes to check it out and see how it is. Some of them would want to race down, and it's like, okay, ready, go, and like watch them all go, and then okay, now I can enjoy myself and just kind of cruise along. And they'd lap me once or twice sometimes, because I was much newer of a skier than they were, so it's like I had no problem doing that slope, but I'm not going to sit there and go breakneck speeds, because I had no need, I didn't feel a need to go those speeds, and I'd fallen at high speed before, and it does not feel good. So
I did feel a need, and I still do. Like if I'm skiing, I want to fly.
Mm-hmm. And I have no problem, being second or behind whoever. So like, if we ever went, like, yeah, go ahead, yeah, you go as fast as you want, and I'll follow up behind, and we'll go where we're going. But I always liked, fresh powder was always fun. Being able to carve a new trail through things with the snowboard, especially. I mean, that was one where when you see those, like you're popping up the rooster trails, like just your rooster tails going up this way and going up that way, and just sending up these big, fountains of powder. Like that's some fun stuff. Nature in its finest. I always like that way more than summertime, where I'm outside and I'm like, ugh, it's freaking hot out here. But I do like water sports too. I like swimming, so there is that too. I always liked both ends of that. So I do. It's good being in Jersey where I am, because I do get all the winter stuff and I get all the summer stuff as well. Some places you really don't get one or the other.
I got like a week of summer last year.
Yeah.
Hoping for at least a week this year.
Yep. But not in February. Not starting just yet. It'll be around sooner.
Winter ends in like July, and then starts again in like early October. Indeed.
Now let's see. Did we go through both of those videos that you had there? I think we did.
No, the Ardusian.
Ah, that's right. We started talking about the Andalusian cadence, but that was a while ago, and we never got around to it. So let's do that one.
Yeah, I actually overloaded my music machine.
Uh-oh.
I got an aw snap message.
I do like that message, just because it's oh snap, something went wrong.
Yeah, Restream just said.
It didn't like it.
Well, I tried something different tonight. I was running the ample guitar in the background. And
Right.
I think it slurped up every bit of memory.
Wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
That's a samba. Just checking it out. Now, we did the hang drum one. The tongue drum, I should say. Oh, yeah. The awesome power of the Andalusian cadence.
Last one, the video clips.
Nice. Alrighty, we'll be back in just a few moments after the awesome power of the Andalusian cadence.
And Glenn.
For the musician who wanted to write songs but didn't think they could do it. For the child who dreams to be a composer but doesn't know where to begin. For the student who created their very first chord progression but it just sounds really bad. I am that musician. I am that child. I am that student. I am the Andalusian cadence.
A real common mistake that I see beginning composers make is that they avoid using common chord progressions. They're afraid of sounding unoriginal or generic. But a common chord progression is like a very old recipe. If you want to become a good cook, you should probably follow the recipe first. And then, as you improve your cooking skills, you can add your own little spin on things, you can improve that recipe. Today, I'm going to be cooking with a very old-fashioned recipe known as the Andalusian cadence, and I'm going to be cooking it up 5 different ways. Now, this chord progression itself has a very rich history, and there's a lot to talk about it. And I'm not going to discuss those things in this video. This video is going to be a demonstration of how to make music, different kinds of music, with something like a stock chord progression. But I do want you to know more about this chord progression. So I'm going to direct you to 2 excellent resources regarding the same topic. The first is a video by composer David Bruce. It's titled The Mystery at the Heart of Flamenco. It's a wonderful exploration into the theory and origins of these chords. And of course, I have to send you to 12 Tone's very thorough explanation of the exact same set of chords. Both of those links are in the description, and I do suggest you watch them because we're not going to be discussing much music theory in this video. But this is Signal's Music Studio, so I do have to talk a little music theory. The Andalusian cadence is a sequence of these 4 chords. And I do explain where these 4 chords come from in my video on writing chords in minor keys. But here's the really easy way to look at it. Start on any minor chord, like E minor, and then jump back a whole step and play a major chord. Now jump back another whole step and play a major chord. Now jump back a half step and play a major chord. So I started on E minor, I went a whole step back to D, I went a whole step back to C, and a half step back to B. So I only have 1 minor chord, and then all major chords. And you can already hear the spice, the flair, the flavor of those 4 chords. These first 3 chords all come from the E minor scale. If I look at the notes in each of these chords, I'll see, oh yeah, those all come from the E minor scale. But this last chord, B major, well, that has a note that's not allowed in the E minor scale. Specifically, you see it's playing the note D sharp. So I can play the E minor scale over these 3 chords and it'll sound just fine. Take a listen. Here's the E minor scale over an E minor chord. And over a D major chord. And over a C major chord. But now listen over the B major chord. Hopefully you hear that doesn't sound too good, because right now I'm playing the E minor scale, which contains a D natural note. And we just saw that the B chord contains a D sharp. So I don't want to be playing lots of D naturals over this chord. Instead, what I want to be playing is a lot of D sharps. So if I keep all of the notes of E minor the same, but I take every D and sharp it, I'm left with this scale, which is E harmonic minor. And E harmonic minor is the scale that I will be using over just that chord. So that's about the simplest way I can describe this chord progression. But like I said, I don't want to do too much theory in this video. I'd like to talk more about songwriting, composition, and what we can do with these chords. The first way I'd like to compose with this chord progression, well, you already heard it. It was that thing we heard in the intro. That was basically just an Andalusian cadence. I just made a few slight adjustments to it. And I actually did an entire 20-minute video on exactly how I composed that, starting from the very, very basics and working my way all the way up to that composition. But that's posted just for my Patreon supporters. You can sign up there for any dollar amount to have access to that video. I've also made this 1-page guide detailing the important aspects of this chord progression and have posted it there at my Patreon. But I personally think what this chord progression is born for and born from is a more Latin style groove. We'll be in the key of D minor this time, which means my chord progression will go from D minor to C major to B flat major to A major. Now I could keep these chords just like they are, but I'd like to make a few improvements to them. Specifically, what I'd like to do is use some suspended chords where I can. For example, here on D minor, I can get away with playing D sus4 and it doesn't leave my key of D minor. Here C major, I'm allowed to play C sus4. Here B flat, I'm allowed to add in the sharp 11. And then for A, I'm just going to play an A7 instead. So my entire chord progression, as I record it on a Spanish classical guitar, sounds like this. From there, what I did is added in some percussion loops. Next, I programmed in a bass line using just the roots and fifths of each one of these chords. lastly, I programmed in a reggaeton-style drum beat. And that gave me this wonderfully spicy little Latin jam, which was just begging for some leads on top. Let's try out something completely different by using the same chord progression, but to do more of a film score, cinematic movie trailer kind of song. Let's move over to everybody's favorite key, A minor, and we'll have these 4 chords of A minor, G major, F major, and E major, but we'll just make it an E7. Very common to make that 5 chord a 7th chord instead. Now, instead of playing these entire chords, let's just play one note from each chord. All right, so for my A minor chord, I'll just play A. For G major, I'll just play the B. For F major, I'll play C. And for E7, I'll just play the D. So I've picked one note of each chord, and it gives me this simple ascending pattern of A, B, C, D. Now let's play that with whole notes on a brass section. Now, let's introduce some strings, but the strings will just play the bass note of each chord. So the strings will just be moving down the notes A, G, F, and E. So they'll be moving down while the horns move up. And even though we don't have any full chords here, we're only hearing 2 notes at a time, the chord progression's so strong that you're still going to hear the implied chord progression. You're still going to hear the full Andalusian cadence, even though we're only playing dyads here, 2-note chords. Now, I do like the way this sounds, but it's certainly missing any sort of rhythmic activity. So I decided to add in some percussion layers, some tribal-style cinematic drums, and also some marching snare. And at the same time that that comes in, we have some staccato cellos playing the exact same notes that our string line is playing, just down the bass notes of the Andalusian cadence. And then I added one more staccato string part, much higher, and once again it only plays one note of each chord. And this specific line gave me a very Zelda-like feel. Now, I really like the way this sounds, but it's missing something in the spotlight. There's no focal point, there's no centerpiece, there's no big melody. Now, I really didn't know what to do here, so I decided to use my phone a friend and call in one of the heavyweights, David Bruce himself. Not only did he put together an epic melody for all of us here, he's also making a video describing how he went through the entire process, and you're going to be able to find that entire video on his channel, which I'm linking right here. So here's just a little example of how he decided to approach this challenge of writing a melody for this simple chord progression.
Hi Jake, really great to be here and thanks for having me. So if you're trying to build a melody on top of an existing chord pattern like this, you've really already got a lot of the hard work of composing out of the way. You know this harmonic structure is there, and you just have to find ways to fit a melody line over the top of it. So the obvious starting place is to take the chords themselves and use notes from there, perhaps moving between them from one chord to the next, maybe adding some scale figures. It's also important, I think, to try and not make it too obvious. So if you just have a sequence that uses the same shape on each chord, just moving downwards, it might get a bit boring. So try and find ways to sort of shake things up a bit, maybe do a pattern that goes over 2 different chords or that runs into the next one slightly. I had a lot of fun doing this little solo and I hope you enjoy it.
So once again, thank you so much to David Bruce for making an appearance here in this video. I absolutely love what he wrote here for us. If you did appreciate that, please go check out his channel and subscribe. It is literally one of my favorite resources on the entire internet. I love his productions and his videos, and I learn so much from each one of his videos. So let's move on. Another drastic change of directions into the world of metal. Specifically, what I'm aiming here for is like video game metal. I want you to think like you're playing Doom, old school PC game, DOS-based Doom, or Mega Man, one of those kind of games. I actually wanted to write something that would translate well over to the synth chips that would be used for an NES or a similar style system. So to begin, we won't even change keys here. We'll just still use the key of A minor, which is A minor, G major, F, and E. But for metal, we don't need entire chords. We can get by with just power chords. You should know that because you watched my video on power chords and you understand how versatile they actually are. So instead of A minor, I'm just going to play an A power chord. I'll play a G power chord, an F power chord, and an E. And you can hear just those power chords on their own give you the feel of the Andalusian cadence, even though we don't have the full chords there. And instead of just playing these 4 chords on a loop like we've done this entire video, let's just change our harmonic rhythm. That's changing when we change chords. For example, let's stay on our A power chord for 2 measures. And then we do our G power chord just for 1 measure, our F power chord for 1 measure, our E power chord for 2 measures, back to our A power chord, and then back to our E power chord. So I know that we've broken the rules here a little bit. We have our Andalusian cadence, and then I decided to just go back from A to E, because it sounds good. A to E will always sound good. So I can just kind of tack that on the end of my Andalusian cadence, and I'm still going to be cooking with the same recipe. I've just made a few little modifications to it. So I'll take these power chords, and instead of just, hitting them once, I'm actually just going to palm mute them. And I'm also going to syncopate the chord changes. I'll be switching these chords early. And of course, you know all about syncopation, because you signed up and took my Name Your Own Price rhythm course, which really explains everything you could possibly want to know about rhythm. So we've just syncopated these chord changes, and I've also added in a few little gallops here and there. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. And for this very last power chord, this very last E, what I decided to do is instead of playing a power chord, let's do a scale run. It's pretty common in metal to just play scales. You don't play chords, you don't play power chords, you just play something in a scale or just play a bunch of notes. So let's do that. And the scale that I've picked is just the A harmonic minor scale, because we're on that chord. Hopefully you remember that this is where the harmonic minor scale comes in. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of play around with the harmonic minor scale. The lick that I wrote goes like this, and it ends on that leading tone of G sharp. So for my last chord, I'm not playing a chord, I'm just doing just a little bit of riff. So the whole riff all together, with some bass added in and with some drums, sounds like this. Now it's time to write a melody for that. And here's the technique that I decided to employ is pedal point. Let's say we're just going up and down 4 notes of the A minor scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now what if after every one of those notes I decided to play some specific note? Like let's say after the notes, every other note I decided to play this note. This is a low E. So I'm going to return to low E after everything I just played. So watch, here's 1, and then E, and then 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's the same thing as 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, but it's more interesting because we have that pedal tone there. We are using pedal point, and we're constantly returning to this note E. And E is a note that's in my A minor chord, so that's why I've chosen that note as my pedal note. So keeping this technique in mind, just by going up and down the scale and pedaling on a chord tone, I was able to come up with this melody on top. Now after that, I decided to harmonize with it using the exact same rules that I taught in my last video on writing harmonies. Now in that example, you might be able to hear there's just a little passage of harmonized fourths to help, break up the monotony of just those pure harmonized thirds. But let's take a listen to what this all sounds like when we put it all together. Now there at the end, during our bonus solo, did you notice that the E minor chord made an appearance? So remember, we are in the key of A minor, and the 5 chord in the key of A minor really is in E minor. That's the natural diatonic 5 chord. What we've been doing here the whole time is making it major, because it has that inflammatory, rebellious flavor to it, right? But there's nothing wrong with the minor 5 chord. Actually, that's the one that we're supposed to be playing if we wanted to stay in the key. So here, I thought it would be nice to introduce a little bit of that soft E minor, because we're so used to hearing E major, it might be like a nice, comfortable, softer change, and I really enjoy its appearance right there. But it's kind of cool, you know, you can see right in this short period of time, we've got an E major chord and an E minor chord, 2 different qualities of chord off of E, and they both sound fine in the key of A minor. Now let's wrap things up with something a little experimental. What I'd like to do is create something weird, something trancy, something psychedelic, something a little disorienting. And I thought what would help here is to use a pedal tone on the bass. Instead of my bass note changing with each chord, let's have the bass note stay the same. So here's A minor with A on the bass. Here's G major, but A is still on the bass. Here's F major, and A is still on the bass. Right? Hear how nice that sounds? How slidey and kind of tethered, right? It kind of keeps you a little bit more in the zone because you don't have these big blocky changes. But I did decide to finally introduce a bass change over the E major chord. I thought it would help to kind of pull us back to A. So what I did is record that progression, but I set my DAW to be in 6/4 time instead of being in 4/4. I think 6 is fun because it provides a lot of different opportunities here for us. Then I decided to write a little synth line that doesn't make a lot of rhythmic sense. All I know is that it takes up 2 measures of 6. And it's weird. It doesn't really fit in on the beats, and that's what I wanted. I didn't do much composing here. It was more of just kind of clicking around and finding something that I kind of liked. After that, I tried programming in some drums, but I really didn't like the way they sounded. And fortunately for me, Beard Snake is back. So I sent this track to him and got some deep drum grooves on top. After that, it was a matter of adding a lot of synth layers, so backing up these pedaled chords that we've created to kind of get a trancier vibe. Now, to introduce this entire groove, I thought it would be fun to use some vocal samples, the sound of a human speaking. So to find some source material for that, I just went on YouTube and searched for the psychedelic patron saint himself, Terence McKenna. I immediately found an interesting sounding clip of him speaking.
And the mushroom said,
and decided to just chop that up, put some effects on it, and throw it on in the beginning of this song. So if we put it all together, here is what it sounds like.
and the mushroom said, for one human being to expect to obtain enlightenment from another is like a grain of sand on the beach, expecting to attain enlightenment from another grain of sand on the beach. Don't you get it? We're all grains of sand.
So do you get the point? It's not about the chord progression you wrote. It's about what you do with the chord progression you wrote. I hate to break it to you, but you're probably not going to write a new chord progression. Like, they've all been done before. There's only 12 notes, you know what I mean? So it's pretty hard to come across something new when you're only talking about a 4-chord loop. But you can still make that 4-chord loop completely original, and you can do anything you want with it, you know, within reason. But you're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to, you know, try out different things. You're going to have to leave your comfort zone, or maybe consult different musical techniques from different regions or from different types of music theories. It's just, you know, if all you know how to do is play an A minor chord and a a G and an F and an E like that on your guitar, and if all you know is one strumming pattern, then yeah, then you're going to be writing generic music because your box of compositional skills is very small. But once you have a chord progression, if you know lots of rhythm patterns, if you know lots of inversions, if you know lots of voicings, if you know lots of arpeggio patterns, all these different little music theory tricks allow you to take a very simple chord progression and expand it into something that I would consider musical. And I hope you consider every one of these examples as musical. They might not be the best compositions you've ever heard, but they are still compositions that I'm proud to have written. And if you had shown me these, 15 years ago and said, hey, this is something you wrote, I wouldn't believe you. These are compositions that I would have believed are beyond me. And they're very simple. They all exist within this 4-chord box. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something from it, and I hope you were inspired by it to just not throw away some old progression you were sitting on, to maybe just play with it and see what happens. So if you like this video and you'd like to support this channel, please consider signing up for my music theory and songwriting course. It's a professional course that walks you through everything you need to know about modern day music theory. I also have a name your own price rhythm course, as I did mention. That's also available on my site, but you could also sign up to my Patreon. I've left a link in the description for that as well. But if you don't want to do any of those things, that's fine. Just leave a like and a comment. That's good enough for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Good stuff, man. Our buddy Jake. Jake's always got good stuff.
And I want to do all those things. I like his channel. I really want watching his approach to music making and arranging, going 6/4 as an alternate melody approach. Something clicked when he said that. Like,
nice.
Well, I write in 4/4, but I have parts that go half a measure into the measure, and doing some of the parts in 6/4 actually would make sense. Absolutely. Because they're a measure and a half worth of melody.
But you got to squeeze it into that measure. See, 6/4, you're fitting 6 notes into that same measure of 4. That's where that is. You're counting basically in triplets in that case. So 2 sets of triplets get in there. What's up, Uncle Dick?
Yeah, the way that he did it made that fit into the 4/4 structure that he started with.
The little same cadence he was talking before. Starting from that A minor.
And I love that now I know, like, that progression, what the name of it is, because I've been playing it.
Oh, yeah. I recognized it also as one that I hear you play from time to time, for sure.
Oh, yeah, I've been doing it with A and E, like, the last couple of years. Because he was talking about, you have to modify that beat. If you don't modify that beat, it does not work.
And that's why you'd want to do it as basically you're doing the dominant 7 at that point. But he was also talking about the scale. If you're playing a scale in there, he's using the harmonic minor because he's trying to get a different. You hear where the notes clash if you are playing a scale in there. So that's like the one note you'd have to watch out for if you're playing scales. But if you're just doing chords, you can, like what you're saying was you're starting on that minor, like A minor for example, and then the G, and then the F, and then for that E, it could be major. Like that was just doing a regular major. But you could also do it with
the E major changes the tone from that A minor. Like the E major, is different.
We could also land it at the E dominant though, in dominant 7, where you same A, G major, F major, and then down here the E7. That's where you're using that flat 7. Yep. And that's where it has a slightly different sound than if it was major, where all you're doing is duplicating the octave there instead. But by getting that 7 in there, now you're making it sound a little bit fancier, and that's what really kind of locks it in, saying it's major, but not with that major 7. You're getting that with that dominant 7. So that's where you're getting that sneaking in there. But I like that. And then he was also talking about theoretically it could be minor, but that sounds weird. E minor, but that would be the natural 5 in the key of A minor. So a couple different ways to look at it. But I definitely like how natural that whole progression feels, coming down as major and coming down to the dominant.
And with Jake, I love seeing his arrangement approach, because
absolutely,
when he brought the metal version in,
yeah, the styles,
the way he was hitting off the metal, very different approach than what he did with the theatrical arrangement.
And it almost sounds like Chicago now. Doing Chicago.
Actually, that's a couple of songs.
To the E dominant. And we find him at Signals Music Studio. And he was talking about the palm muting, and so that's where, I mean, that's one of the things that, with no effects on, it wouldn't sound nearly the same as it would sound if you were, actually doing whatever. Plus, I think something's getting fuzzy with the guitar. If I'm playing too loud, little buzz. At least it's buzzing for me. But if I'm just keeping it clean, it's usually fine. That's just using 5 chords, which makes it nice and easy because you're only playing 2 notes. So this is where this would be the difference if you were playing in a drop tuning. Like if you're playing drop D tuning, then you would play both fat strings, the fattest 2 strings on the same fret, and you'd get the sound of the 5 chord. And that's what makes the drop tunings quite popular, because then you would just be hitting these 2 together, those 2, and those 2, instead of going the 1 and the 5 this way. Oh, another buzz. Hope that doesn't come through too loud. But that is one of those things. So Signals Music Studios, where we find him. That's our buddy Jake. And the other videos that we watched tonight, like we looked at a couple different channels. We talked about Dr. Becky's channel. We talked about Anton Petrov's channel. We talked about Star Talk, a little bit of science. We started out with at the beginning, talking about the comet.
Yeah, we went to space.
Yep, to space and back to the green comet. Angie's favorite. Talk a couple different progressions and cadences. I like that Andalusian cadence. We'll look at some other ones. I think Jake has other cadence videos as well for a couple of different types of progressions, cadences.
Oh, and I'm going to check out his songwriting lessons, because that's the kind of lessons that I want to go take.
Yeah.
I want to become a better songwriter, arranger, composer. These are the minds to show you.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of what I really like about it is that he doesn't get super complicated with it. It's not, you have to go get this, this, and this. It's basically whatever you have in front of you, we can make stuff right now. Like, this is how we can just sit down and make stuff right now. So that's, I really like that.
Yeah, he has a very nice, natural approach.
Mm-hmm. He's also the one who had one of the videos in his collection, probably far back, even at this point, like many years ago, was one where he did just a medley of songs that all use the same 4-chord progression, because we were talking about the common progressions.
Well, the
and
Dad
whichever
Rock,
one it was,
the
it might have
Dad
been
Rock video was my favorite.
And that was all about Dorian, right? Like everything in Dorian mode, most of the Dad Rock. That was one where the actually the one background item I had over here was from High Country Guitar. Remember we looked at that earlier? I think it was this one. High Country Guitar. We were talking a little bit about the different tools or backgrounds that I use for, whether I'm jamming or just learning something or working on whatever. Sometimes I'll just use materials like this. It's a lot of information, a lot of colors. Like, don't want to blind you with all that.
Actually, the colors help for me. I'm starting to see scales in colors
Mm-hmm. Nice.
It's helping. Like I feel like every note does really have a color.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
Yep.
if I agree with that coding. C as red. Hmm.
In this case, it was because we're just doing the root. And as far as the circle of fifths, I think it's just going around, from red all the way around through a purple, just to show you that, in this case, you got to split it up into 12 when you're doing the 12 keys there. But for me, the bottom left section where it's all the different modes, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, down the bottom on the left there. Actually, I think I still have this guy, the green circle. I can move that around a little bit as a cursor. But we have all those modes down the bottom there. Each of those starts with the root is going to be red. So no matter what fret you're playing on, like this Ionian mode, this is saying you're starting with the second finger as a red note, and that's going to be the root. And then going red up through, red, orange, yellow. Those are the first three notes of the scale. So red, orange, yellow are the 1, 2, 3. Then, the green, the blue going through. And then when you get back to the red again, you're back to the root. So this is a way of keeping track of where the root moves to. But I also did it in a different way where now instead of that being like if you were playing in C, Ionian, C major, now if you go to Dorian, instead of being C Dorian, this would be now D Dorian. So it's basically moving up one as if you're still playing in C, but playing all the same notes just in the next mode. So you can keep track of where that root is. But with some of these, it's more a question of, having the circle of fifths out there is really just to keep an eye on which chords are where. Let's see, this guy. What I was starting to move was...
Well, the circle of fifths is always a nice reminder graph to have in your musical vision. Like
Definitely. One of the others that I always have is this part over here in the green circle, the minor pentatonic, which I have highlighted here. And this is A major pentatonic, or sorry, A minor pentatonic all over the neck. So you can see it in the different positions. Like we would call this minor pentatonic box 1, where from the bottom there, that's like 5 on tablature. That would look like 5/8, 5/7, 5/7, 5/7, 5/8, 5/8 would be the way that pattern would look. The next box over here would be major pentatonic. So that would be at this point 7/9, 6/9, 6/9, 6/8, 7/9, 7/9. And that's where, if you were looking at it on tab, you can kind of see how it would play out. If you have a guitar in your hand, you can just say, okay, I can play this pattern here. Once you got that pattern, you also see the same pattern right up here, because 12 frets higher, you see 1 octave higher, the same pattern. And that just makes it so that you can, get yourself from one place to another. And that's all you have to do is memorize, pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3, pattern 4, and pattern 5, and then you're back to pattern 1 again. So like once you get those locked in, you know where all the notes are. And that doesn't mean you can play everything or do everything with that, but it does give you a palette of notes to work with and a hand position where, if you're just playing in this root position, like a lot of people get stuck in a pentatonic box where they just always play in this home root position and they always land on the 1 and they always end their phrases on the 1, and it sounds predictable and it sounds the same all the time. One way to break out of that is to just shift into one of the other boxes and see how it feels there, and you'll find where the root landing is still and see what else you want to land on or how things sound different.
And those are the frets at the top. So 5th fret and 17th fret are the beginning of the patterns.
Exactly, yep.
Yeah.
And the one thing to look at there, just like you said, at the 5th and the 17th, it's the entire line, and there's only that one spot throughout the pattern of the pentatonic where there's that full straight line. So John Mayer calls that the pentatonic equator, because you've got the stuff on this side of the equator is the minor pentatonic, and then on the other side of the equator is like the pattern box 5. But once you got that, you've got those two patterns locked in, and then you already know the one right next to it to the right is the major pentatonic, the one that's right here, where you're starting with like that curved pattern. The way I would describe that fingering, where it doesn't matter what key we're in, like at this point, if you were looking at it on tablature, this would say 8/10, 7/10, 7/10, 7/9, 8/10, 8/10. But if I were just describing the position, the hand position to somebody, I would call it 2/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/3, 2/4, 2/4, because that's just one finger per fret, talking about that 4-fret span that we're dealing with. And that's just one way to describe the hand positions. But once you get those, again, there's only 5 of them. So once you get those 5 locked in.
Man, I wish I got to sit next to you in math class when I was a kid. Because when you explain it the right way, whether you're talking like regular math or music, it starts to make sense when you see that pattern.
Yep. And then once we take this, like this is just looking at the pentatonics, but the way that it relates to the diatonics, like if you wanted to talk about A minor, then that's up here, which is a Aeolian in this position. And you can see how it's the same hand positions. Once you get those 5 pentatonic positions locked in, you could relate each of those to the 5 positions that they relate to up here for the fingerings for the full diatonic scale, where for here, for example, this is minor, this is A minor. So if I were looking at this entablature from the bottom, it would be 5 7 8 5 7 8 5 7 4 5 7 5 6 8 5 7 8 would be the way that whole pattern would look. But that's running A minor through 2 octaves essentially, and then the extra 2 notes at the top, because the root note at the bottom 3 notes that you play and the top 3 notes, those are the same, but they're 2 octaves apart, because these are both A's as the first note, so it's going to be A, B, C on both of these, but 2 octaves apart.
I feel like I'm looking at musical guitar DNA.
Yep.
It almost looks like a DNA pattern.
One thing that confuses people a little bit is the fact that all of this stuff that we're looking at over here, the neck is this way.
See the 1, 2, 3, 4 pattern with the opening. On 4, you see a single. On 9, you see a double. On 15, you see a triple. Or 14, you see a triple. And then what is it? Is that 25 or 19?
One thing is to remember all the ones on 0 in this case are in there as well. So like where you see it from 1 through 4, you would actually usually be doing 0 through 3 as the position. So you'd be ignoring that last one, and you'd be doing like 0 1 3 0 2 3 0 2 3 0 2 0 1 3 0 1 3 to get through that fingering with the opens. And then you would like slide up to this one for next, where you'd be doing is that 3 5? Yeah, so 3 5 2 3 5 2 3 5 2 4 5. Like when you're looking at the actual way you'd see it in the tablature, you know, going through each of those positions. But you'd get each of these positions locked in, where you're doing basically 3 of, you know, a 4 fret span. Occasionally you would move to a 5 fret span, but you're usually trying to keep it all to 4 when you're doing these positions at least. And those were what kind of lock into these over here, where this relates the pentatonic shape to the diatonic shape in the same way, where like this was A minor or A Aeolian and A minor pentatonic, and you would see that as this one here as the G shape pentatonic locking in with Aeolian, which is the minor. So like these two are together in the same way these two are together. It's just that this whole thing is spun to the side, because now the neck is pointing up and down with all of these, where the neck is left and right for here. So it's a little bit confusing the way I put it together.
Yeah, and you know how they show the neck, because you know with ample guitar I'm looking at, it's weird to me because they're showing it upside down. Like to me, it looks upside down, but it is actually how a right-handed player sees their guitar.
And this is kind of another way to look at it, which is the this one we got from High Country Guitar. Is another one of the resources I look at, and this one has some good backing tracks. In this case, it was an Uncle John's Band backing track that they had in G Ionian. So in this case, if you see the positions up here with the 5 cage shapes that we were talking about, this middle one is the C shape. And this would be in the caged format. This is C, and then A, and then G, and then I'll wrap around E and D, and then back to the C. So once you get those 5 shapes, you can basically, you're playing the same chord in each of those positions. So if you were playing a G chord at the 3rd fret, you can play this one. And then you can play at the 5th fret, you play the D shape. And then you go up to the 7th fret for playing the C shape, and the 10th fret for the A shape.
Easy to move around to.
Yep, and once you get into each of those shapes, the main thing is, okay, that's fine. Okay, now I can play those chords, but how does that help me play a solo? It's like, okay, well, there are the cage shapes, and when you're in this shape, play this pentatonic shape. And you can see the root notes are in the same place, so that locks in. So this locks into this, locks into this. So this is going from the chord, which is just doing the chord, you know, tones. So this is like root 5, root 3, 5, root, when you go from the bottom to top. Then when you go here, you're in the pentatonic shape, where you're doing 5 notes per octave, going, you know, in this case, major pentatonic. So this would be root 2, 3, 5, 6, root for the scale degrees. And then when you come down here, you're doing G Ionian fingerings, where it's actually the Locrian fingering. So this is starting from just before the G with that F sharp on the 2nd fret. But that blue dot on the left there is on the G. So that would be starting there and then going through all of the notes in the G major scale in that fingering, and then again at the 5th fret, at the 7th fret, at the 10th fret, at the 12th fret, and then you're back to at the 14th fret to go up to an octave from here.
Lather, rinse, repeat.
Yep. And then each of those, once you get those, it's basically this whole thing kind of contains all you really need to know for movable chord shapes, which it gives you, again, these are the 5 movable chord shapes. The one that I honestly don't use as much are the D shape, which is this one, and the C shape. Now the C shape I should use more, and I started using more that I started skipping the lowest note and skipping the highest note and just using these 3, where I'm just using like those 3 that are kind of close to each other. So if I were looking at this on tab, this would be 9, 7, and 8, with the blue one being the 8. And if you're just hitting those 3 notes, that little triad, it sounds really nice, and it's easy to use that shape, and you're just kind of implying that you're using this root note that's off by itself on the side, because otherwise that root note is your pinky, and you're stretching with that one. Same way with this chord shape, that blue note is your pinky on the bottom, hitting that low note. Whereas the A shape, like this, has your index finger, and then the bar is your ring finger, hitting those 3 together. And with this one, it's also your index finger barring all those in the back, and then your other 3 fingers hitting those 3 notes that are ahead of the line. So I kind of look at it as E shape is a bar with the index finger with the stuff ahead. This one is not really a bar. Well, you bar with those notes at the bottom, and then you're reaching with the pinky. With this one is the other most common, the A shape, where it's the bar I use the bar with the ring finger, but some people, they hit the individual notes, but I can't really fit my 3 fingers in the same spot to do that, especially when I get higher on the neck. And this one's just a little bit about the shape, again, reaching with the pinky, and then trying to hit those 3 at the top. Something that takes getting used to, but if you're only hitting these 4 together, or if you're only hitting these 3 together, it makes it a little easier for that shape. But once you relate each one to each position is good.
It with this kind of tab notation, showing the potential finger or the best choice, the best finger for the note, especially with guitar.
Yep, that's actually what I did with one of the other resources that I have.
I get confused sometimes on the keyboard side, what's the best finger to use in a progression, but with guitar, there's a lot of different options.
Oh yeah, and that's where whether it's chords or whether it's scales, there's definitely different ways of looking at the things. But as far as with these and these down here, actually, the way these fingerings are, these are all not, you wouldn't call these 3 notes per string, because on some of the strings you're only doing 2 notes. These are more staying in one position where you're not stretching too far. So these are, you'll also see people talk more for speed playing. They'll talk about 3 notes per string. And that's where if you're up here, you're playing these notes. Where for major, for example, right here you'd be playing, it would be 8, 10, 12, 8, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12. So you're playing like these entire 2 columns here without those last 2 at the end. And these low 2 that are by themselves come across. So you're doing each of those bottom lines are 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5 essentially.
So when you see those guitars just kind of like up and down, up and down,
yep,
that is the pattern that they're following.
It's usually something like that. Now, in some cases, let me use a different circle here, because if we're talking a smaller area like that, like if we take they're doing, let's say, not quite big enough, but these 6 notes right here, right? I would call that a 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. Because, or if you looked at it on tab, it would say 8, 10, 12, 8, 10, 12, right? And then instead of, a lot of people, they would just slide up and take these next ones, right? And then this way it would be 9, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12. And then take these 3, because they look the same as well, or these, pairs. So like you do this pair, and this pair.
So no matter what string you're on, as long as you know the 3-note pattern, you can up and down the string.
Yep. Now the other thing is, if you look at all the different places on the strings, like if you see these,
except for the 5th string,
if I call these, well, in some cases everything's shifted a little bit because of that, because the way the tuning goes. But if you just look at the pairs, right, you see these are, I would call these 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, right, because we're not hitting the second note in there. But if you just consider the 4 frets in a row here, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. If you looked at these, I would look at these as 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. And if I look at these at the bottom, this was 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. So this is more of a bit of a stretch. But if you look at those 3 different combinations of things, and you start, down here, let's say, it's 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. If you look at these groups. It's 1 2 4 1 2 4. This group here is you got a 1 2 4 and a 1 3 5. It's like as you look at those different combinations, it's only those three combinations of 1 2 4, 1 3 4, or 1 3 5. And with those combinations, you can literally play all of these different combinations anywhere you want. You can just circle these notes 1 3 4 1 3 4. You jump up over here and hit these, and you got 1 2 4, and or in this case, slide back one and do it. But you can see that anywhere, just from those couple of fingerings, so that's why getting good at just even a few positions and fingerings can get you to the point where you can really fly all over the neck. But one way to do it smoothly is, like I was saying, taking one position here, 1 3 5 1 3 5, and then 1 2 4 1 2 4, and then 1 3 4 1 3 4, and then you can just jump and do other things with individual strings if you want. But just having the ability to and like go up and down in galloping, like you were saying, 3 notes per string. The idea is that it's a constant gallop because you can just on every string. You're getting those triplets out.
Yeah. I take it back. I thought guitar was gonna be like easier. I thought you guys had it easier when
in some cases.
To you have your muscle memory, but remembering like those. With these patterns, like which string you have the 3-note option and the little gaps where there's only 2 notes, that's a lot more muscle memory that you guys have to program than a keyboardist. I now feel like the black-white key muscle memory, wow.
Yeah. But now the other thing is that you can just take this one spot, this one position. If all you learn is in this green oval right here, that's the minor pentatonic. If all you knew is that, you still are accessing all of the 2 octaves worth of notes in A minor.
If you recognize the pattern on any one of these, and you know that like 5 frets up, once you know the distance, you can duplicate the same thing. That's how those guitar soloists are like sliding all the way up the neck and doing the same thing, and then sliding all the way down and doing the same thing.
Well, another one that's important to notice is this pattern right here. It's one of my favorites. I would describe this as 1 3 1 3 5, or in this case, if you saw it on tab, it would be 8 10 8 10 12. Right? You can see the 5 notes I'm talking about. Because if you take those 5 notes and it's just that 1 3 1 3 5 pattern, you'll see that if you slide just down and left a little bit, it's the same exact pattern right here, 1 3 1 3 5. And if I slide
up, so it doesn't even map 2 strings or the 2 middles
or the 2 bottoms. It's the same.
2 bottoms.
It's the same pattern.
Bitch.
So for this, I would do this right here. Like one of the things I like to do in this case is go 3 5 3 5 7. And then 5 7 5 7 9, and then
all
up here.
you do is slide back like what, 2 frets, and go
in this
up
case
2 strings.
Yep. Well, basically, I just do like I'm using my first finger and my middle finger, and then on that 1 3 5 line, first finger, middle finger, and pinky, and then when I jump to here, I just go from the pinky on that last note up to the index finger here, and I'm back to 1 3 1 3 5. And then back to 1 3 1 3 5, and you just have to remember the extra shift going from here to here. But if you get that one pattern down, you got half of the neck locked already. And then look at this. This is the 3 5 1 3 5. If I slide here, it's reversed. 1 3 5 3 5. And if I take that same pattern and come down a little bit, 1 3 5 3 5. And if I come down here, 1 3 5 3 5, and that's literally everything. Because then it all repeats right here with the 3 5 1 3 5. So once you get that locked in, you realize that gives you the freedom to basically go 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, and then you can jump into this box for 1 2 3 4 5. And then you can jump up here if you want to do those with a bend at the end. And then as long as you're keeping track of basically where you are in these 1 3 5 3 5 1 3 5 patterns, you can basically navigate everywhere just using that one pattern and find your way around.
Ange wants it to be 1 3 4. We're gonna have to
1 3
find a way to make this work.
I can. It's right over here actually. Lost my mouse. Where'd the mouse go?
Glenn's got
I think the
an
squirrel
awesome
got it.
set of tools, Ange.
We can fix anything. Well, it's up here actually, right here. And that's the
is
A minor.
Ange gonna shit or is she gonna kill us?
She gonna shit, then he gonna kill us. But right here is the A minor. The first 6 notes of A minor are 1 3 4 1 3 4. So that's perfect because at the same time, like, see how that's right there? What happens if I go up and over by 1? Boom. I go 2 frets over, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. And then if I slide up.
Doing 1, 3, 4, you start with A minor.
Yep. And same thing
I
up
like
here. So
it.
the same thing, the same idea of string pairs. And then if you prefer, like, let's say you don't like 1, 3, 4, but you want 1, 2, 4. Well, just do these. And then up here. And then up here. Because those same patterns, like once you get those same 6-note patterns, you can just, you know, ba-da-da-da-da-da, hit that last note on the way up, da-da-da-da-da-da, hit the last note on the way up, da-da-da-da-da-da, and then you're there. And so it looks like a whole lot of stuff, but like once you start making some of these connections and you hear how octaves connect to each other and you see how the 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4 connects to this down here, and they're actually the same things. Like in this 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, if you only hit the 1, 4 on the first line and you only hit the 1, 3 on the second line, that's what this is. And that's why these equate to each other, because all of these notes are contained in here. We're just hitting additional 2 notes each octave in here, so there's 4 more notes up in here.
If you can get your muscles in your memory to do that, you won't hit bad notes.
Yep, but the main difference is, like, if you're just getting started, like just learning this first one, this, you know, minor pentatonic position, and the second one right next to it is the major pentatonic position. Like, if you just were going to learn one thing out of here, learning those would be very helpful. Learning this one back here would help too, but also just getting started with that and recognizing what it sounds like, getting it under your fingers. If you're somebody who's stuck in a rut where everything that you play seems to sound the same and all sounds like pentatonic, then you're wanting to start to branch into this stuff where you're doing, you know, the 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4s and moving up like that. Now you're playing diatonically within there, and you're going to figure out what sounds right and what doesn't within particular scales. Like he was using the harmonic minor, Jake, and some of those things he was doing because the one note clashed. You can hear that when you're playing it. If you hear a note clash, just realize you can move it a little over this way or a little over that way, and it'll probably sound right either way, but it changes the function.
That was the 4th chord in his progressions?
I think so. With the 4th chord, he was changing it to the
B and the E
in
and 2 examples.
And he did show that it could technically, that last chord could be major, it could be dominant, and it could be minor, and all of them have their place, although the main cadence sounds more like it's major or dominant, major or a dominant 7.
Now she's going 1, 4, 3.
1, 4, 3, sure. And that's the thing is, if you're playing 1, 4, 3, I mean, that's take that A minor, right? That 1, 3, 4 is actually...
And she's throwing a 7th in there. You're fucking with us.
And if you want to go 1, 4, 3, you're going from the A to the C to the B. But actually, that's the 1 to the 3 to the 2 if we're looking at scale degrees. So 1, 4, 3. 1, 4, 3. If 1 is A minor. But if you were playing where we're playing the relative major, then the 1, 4, 3 would be CFE. And that sounds a little spookier almost. And if you throw a 7, a major 7.
Now we're in sci-fi spooky.
Because that's root 3, 4,
we
and
ran into an
major
alien.
7. But you get that one in there. Uh-oh. You hear that one coming a mile away. Because that sounds like a European siren. To me, at least. Which does not go in a samba rhythm. Or does it?
It works good in cinematics. Like, whether you're talking cartoons with a symphony or you're talking like those 50 sci-fi movies where they started to use like electronic sounds, those kind of notes together make for the tension and the mystery.
And for those who haven't seen the Meticulous, that's what's kind of peeking out in the bottom here. You can kind of see the the pedals. But when I'm playing, that's what's showing. Normally, this is what the full screen would look like in Meticulous, where normally I'm only capturing part of it from my usual camera view.
You know what would be awesome if Meticulous had pop-ups or pop-outs that could put some of these charts.
Yeah, for me, it's about arranging on the screen. And so, like, when I have things laid out like this, it's like I usually just have them up there so that when I'm playing, I can just be looking at, you know, if I'm playing a song and I hear, okay, I'm in minor, I can just kind of have my eyes rest on that Aeolian up at the top there. And I'm just kind of watching as I'm going up and down. I don't need it to be there to see what I'm playing, but it reinforces what I'm hearing and where I'm seeing myself on the chart and where I know where I am. And if I want to jump to a different position, it makes me more confident in like, okay, now I can just slide over 2 frets and now I'm here and I'm looking at the new pattern. Helps get it all locked in.
It really does, because look, being able, I want that circle of fifths on my background, on my music machine.
Yeah.
Just having it there, no matter what chord I'm playing, seeing that will always help me know what chord I might want to go to.
And this one came from, we actually had this as part of one of the videos that we did recently, so I don't have it in front of me, but I think I have such a hard time finding my mouse, but there it is.
And it also helps me with the sheet music with the scales, like being able to see all of them in the staff like that. Quick.
Yeah.
Now
it's
that
one
I
way
know,
to see it easy.
Yeah, now that I know the pattern, like that makes sense to me these days.
Yep, and it's got the relative minors right there with them, so that as you're looking at C major, you see A minor right below it, so you know that C major and A minor are together, and you start to recognize the pairs. G major, E minor, D major, B minor.
I'm in C sharp major. I'm in a crazy fucking scale.
Yeah, and you're down there on the bottom, because if you see on the bottom how it's got either 5 flats or 6 or 5 flats or 7 sharps, and then on the B side you've got the the 5 sharps, and then down at the bottom you got the 6 of each.
C sharp and F sharp should be the scariest scales to work with on a keyboard, but F sharp actually is fun.
Yeah, they both actually, because both of those use all of the black notes. So in that case, it's kind of the inverse of playing in the keys of C major and A minor, where you're playing with all the white notes and you can just ignore the black notes. It makes it easy. In this case, you're using all the black notes. So you're just saying, okay, if there's a possibility of using a black note, use it. And then there's only 2 white notes that you have to deal with, and you're fine. The pentatonics are even better, because with the pentatonics down the bottom there, that's where you're dealing with the E flat minor pentatonic, which you're not seeing it because I'm not showing this guy again. But yeah, it's all the black notes here. And if you're landing on that E flat, it sounds like minor. But if you're landing on that G flat, that's G flat major. Is 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 are the scale degrees in a major pentatonic, and 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, 4, 5, 7. I'm like, this one missing. 1, 3, 4, 5, 7 for a minor pentatonic. But yeah, fun, because there's 5 notes, and it just they feel like they all want to land in the one spot or the other. And if you do just try to land on the others, it sounds like it's unsettled, wants to go somewhere.
Well, and if you use the right instruments, it's that kind of like Japanese Asian sound.
Yep.
You throw a kodo on top of that with that key, it's gonna sound like that.
Yep.
Karate Kid too.
Yeah. Trying to find him now. Oh, I found sitar. Uh-oh.
Yeah, and it also works in the Mid-Eastern. Yeah. Isn't there like a Mid-Eastern scale that's like 24 semitones?
Yep. Yeah, most of what Eastern music would be in using 24 per octave instead of 12 like we do. So basically every note that we have, there's another note in between there.
There's a half note. We got to do a night on that, because I've been wanting to deep dive into that.
Mm-hmm. We should then.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do it on a night when I have a fretless in the house, though, because with stringed instruments, you really can't do it as well. And also with keyboards, I've never tried it with keyboards, but I imagine that would mean that 2 octaves would all be technically 1 octave worth of stuff. So you'd have to be hitting 2 octaves worth. It would really be weird to me where, what looks like the same note, C to C, that next C here, it would actually be kind of right in the middle of the octave, because the C to C would actually be this far. So in the middle, instead of being that note, you'd go from here to here with that one in the middle, and there'd be like one on either side of that, between there and there, and there and there. So it would be interesting. But on the fretless, you can get to those semitones. And it's usually not because you're trying to use all of the 24 notes in between, but it's more that you're, getting whichever ones you want to. And I don't know, we'd have to look at that. The structure of a raga, for example, would be a good example. Because I remember one of the bass players I was watching on TV, somebody asked him what he does for warm-ups, and he was talking, I do some ragas, some this and that. And I was thinking about how if a raga is, Eastern music, then we don't have the right instruments for it, but he's on a fretless, so it doesn't matter. He can play all the in-between notes he wants. So I'm like, perfect. That's good ear training because he's now tuning into notes that are, half as far apart as the ones that we usually hear. So he'll have to really home in to hear where he's got to be.
And in some cases, with some of the instruments there, the instruments are purposely detuned. Because like the sitar sound, it's like the second string is off on purpose.
In some cases, the sitar, the understrings, they should be identically tuned because that way they vibrate sympathetically. So what you're playing on the main instrument, like if I'm playing a chord on a guitar, we're playing that chord on the sitar, and there's strings underneath there that resonate with each of those tones. So like the root, the third, and the fifth, there's strings underneath that are automatically tuned to those notes that are ringing out because they vibrate sympathetically because we're playing, those notes elsewhere on the instrument. So that's usually where that comes through in that way. But it's one of those things that on the sitar, that's why it would be very important for everything to be tuned properly for it to work out right. If they are detuned, it would be a problem.
It feels like it's purposely detuned. It's like a honky-tonk piano. Like, what gives it the honky-tonk sound is it's not... It's like two strings are being hit, and one is like a semitone off, and it twangs.
Like the piano in the corner at the old saloon in a Western, right? Because, that's what kind of makes it sound like it's an old piano in the corner of a Western is the fact that it's just a little bit out of tune.
The garage band piano sound.
Yep, exactly. And there was one, even some of the VSTs that I got at one point, instruments, one of them was like a toy piano or piano that was found at a garage sale, or sitting outside and then somebody brought it in or whatever and just, played it as it was. Like it wasn't, wasn't tuned up. It was just however it happened to land on the curb is how they started, recording it essentially. And it did have that, the sound of, this is not a professional piano. You didn't just step onto a stage at Carnegie Hall and start playing this piano. Like this one, no, this one was clearly in the garbage and you pulled it out and started playing it, just for the hell of it. So it had that unique sound. But we've been going for a long time tonight, so we better let some people get some sleep around here, right?
Oh yeah, Angie's gonna kick your ass.
Yeah, but she was sending messages not too long ago, so at least we know she wasn't, hanging out all that time just waiting on us. But it is always a pleasure talking some SHHhhh IT with Tony.
We checked out some cool IT today.
We looked at some science, and we looked at some equipment with the drum, the very cool thing that you found there. We looked at some songwriting stuff, some structure stuff with Jake. We looked at some scale and fingering position stuff, easy now, with the charts that we had over here, and we looked at some Meticulous to see what that all looks like. Got a bunch of stuff in. And for the links that we had that we saw with Tony there, we'll try to get those over so we can take a look at them. The same channels, he linked them in the chat. The other channels that we looked at over here, the science stuff, we can look at those as well. And always happy to look at that stuff.
Yeah, we gotta set up all these guys on our YouTube channel.
Exactly.
That's gonna be a nice, easy place to find them.
Yeah. Once again, I keep my the channels that I subscribe to on YouTube basically are all science and music, and kind of like if there's a better way to organize them, that would be good. But for now, it's like we could just run down that list and be like, yep, you want that one, you want that one, you want that one, and basically that whole list is gonna that'll get us some good resources to be able to just click over to and just have stuff all day on good music theory and songwriting stuff.
And we'll be back next week.
Yes, indeed.
With some more of that.
Yep. Talking shh. And we'll get some bass involved, some piano, some guitar, some vocal. The vocal formants, that's one that we didn't do today, but we'll get to that one next time for sure.
Yeah, a vocal night and a guitar night definitely in the works.
We can do that. And thanks again, everybody. And we will catch you guys next time.
Night,
Talking SHHhhh IT. Ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some BandLab clips.
Yeah.
Now for me, that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out. Kind of.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.